I always like to start on the dot so that I can see like how long we've been going, and like that'd be relative to what time it is. But now it's 4 minutes late, thanks to you, Jolly.
I'm sorry.
You bastard.
Shit.
I know.
I had the stream open on another tab, but I thought I had the audio muted. But then it started coming through, and I was like, "What's happening? Why do I hear myself?" So
mental.
That was my story. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Anyway, we are here. We are gathered here today on this wonderful August 27th, 2023, to commemorate the release of a brand new Dave Filoni show, who's, of course, everyone's favorite writer-director, right? We're all in agreement there.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic. Also, going by that intro, I guess we are now live.
We are, yeah. As of 55 seconds ago, we are, in fact, live.
Excellent. So. Yes, we have another show to dissect because, we ended Mando, and we thought what we really need in our lives, what we really desperately want more than anything else in the world, more even than a horse or a pony or a dog, Sheev, is I really want another Filoni-made Star Wars show.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, he is the savior of Star Wars, as we all know.
I have been told that he is the savior of Star Wars. Which, I mean, if this is considered saving Star Wars, then God, the franchise is even more of a dire straits than I thought it was, which I didn't think was possible. But
listen, I look up into the sun and I just see his face smiling down. You know,
he's like the Teletubbies, baby.
Oh my God.
I guess that makes us... There is that one meme that everyone loves to share around where like Dave Filoni is basically like a god in the sky that we're worshiping, and it's like, okay, guys, calm down.
Yeah, he's thing is, I kind of get it, right? Because like, if you're a Star Wars fan, you have not exactly been eating good, other than Andor, for like the last like almost decade. So I get why they're desperate for anyone to come in and save it. So anything that's even like marginally better, they're like, yes, inject it into my veins.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the last, like, I want to say 3 or 4 years of shit, the show's a masterpiece just by comparison.
Actually, yeah, that's probably a good place to start, right? Because which is just the level, like the kind of where criticism is generally at on the show in both directions.
Yeah,
people need to calm down. People just need to calm the fuck down. Like, Ahsoka is not a good television show. Like, categorically, it's just not. It's also not nearly as bad as Mando. It's sitting...
It's pretty comfortably, like, in the middle there. Like, it's fine to mediocre so far.
Yeah, like, I would put it above the other Mandoverse shows, but it doesn't come anywhere close to Andor.
Yeah, that's really a no-brainer, right? Right, like it's not reaching any heights. I wouldn't like even give it like more than a 4.5 out of 10 so far, but like,
yeah, I'd hover at about a 5.
It's not that bad yet.
Not yet. Yeah, that's the operative word, right? It's like yet.
We are. I think Jolly and I've talked about this at length already. We are fully expecting it to get significantly worse from here. It's all downhill going forward.
Yeah, so far it's the reason it's at a 5 for me is that like it hasn't done anything like catastrophically world-damagingly bad.
Yes, Jolly has a decent mic now. We are fully in the range of good live stream quality now. Hopefully, maybe.
I know it's finally nice for people to hear my voice as God intended, which is to say, coming out of a computer and with me locked away from society. Yeah, no, the thing is, like, the reason it's a 5 is, like, it hasn't done anything catastrophically bad in the kind of order of Mando. Like, nothing cataclysmically illogical has happened in the world building. On the other hand, nothing has really happened at all. Like, that's, it's like nothing bad has happened and nothing good has happened either. It's just kind of happened. Like, there's been a lot of walking shots. Lots of people have been walking. My God.
Oh, yeah, I got flashbacks to like the Game of Thrones series finale while watching this.
Oh God, yeah, it does have that vibe.
It is weird, yeah, because like we talk about slow pacing. People would immediately be like, "Oh, but you like Andor. You don't get to complain about slow pacing." It's like, but like everything in Andor is deliberate and purposeful, and like. Even when it's slow, it's fast, right? Like it's well paced. Honestly, one of my bigger criticisms of some arcs in Andor is that like some of the things happen too quickly. Like the aftermath of the Aldhani heist. It's like, yeah, we're here now, and then Skeen's a traitor, and Cassian shoots him, and he runs off with the money. That all happens in the span of like 5 minutes, and it's like, okay, well, that could have been a little bit longer, but okay.
It also has a couple of contrivances here and there, but otherwise it's pretty solid.
Whereas with Ahsoka, it's like, she's meandering through this temple, and she's kind of just looking around.
Who's just badmouth Madzo? I hope you mean Westworld season 2 and 3 and 4, because season 1 of Westworld I will hear nothing against. That is blasphemy of the highest order.
Season 1 of Westworld is one of the greatest pieces of television ever. So
it's extraordinary.
It died with Anthony Hopkins' character.
Yep.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
It really did, because immediately like a shift in quality. Season 2 was fine, but like
season 2 was okay.
You could just see the difference. It was as if Ford was the lifeblood of the show, and the second he died, so did it.
I mean, yeah, it did feel that way. Actually, because this is something I want to say in terms of the Andor comparisons, right? This is like a general thing. I am so tired. I'm so uninterested in hearing people just say, as a criticism of something, it's boring. Like, that doesn't mean it. Okay, this is where I go on a slight rant, so bear with me.
Okay.
Like, in the same manner as for Andor, right? I don't want to hear people criticize a show or a scene or a character or whatever as like just quote unquote being boring, right? Without making some kind of argument to qualify what the hell you mean. Like, you need to tell me what it is that makes that scene unengaging to a particular audience, right? And you can do that. You can say things like, this scene wasn't dynamically shot and the music was too slow paced and that undercut any sense of urgency, and the lighting and the color grading made everything seem flat and washed out. And
which are all criticisms that we're going to be giving to Ahsoka. Don't worry.
Oh, absolutely. Like you could honestly like just apply this to the opening scene in the temple with her, right? Of like, bad lighting, bad color grading, making everything seem flat, washed out, textureless, visually unvaried, and all of this kind of combining to make a monotonous experience, because there is simply literally no details for an audience to latch onto. It's all the same. That's how you can make it like an objective, quote unquote, argument for like why a scene or a visual is boring to a general audience. That is very different from just going, "Oh, I was just bored. I found it boring. I was just bored." It's like, I don't fucking care.
Right. Well,
it doesn't mean anything to me.
Because it's like it's literally like we've said this in past live streams. It's like you can say that, but all I have to say is, "Oh, I didn't find it boring," and then where do we go from there?
Well, when someone just says it's boring and without any qualifiers in relation to Andor, I'm just forced to come to the conclusion that you just have a short attention span. I'm sorry.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Fuck you, audience.
I'm already seeing people in the comments criticize the lightsaber stabbing thing. So we'll get to it when we get to it. There are things to be said about that.
Well, and one thing I want to say, just on Ahsoka as a whole, I think the only reason that I would probably put this series like marginally above the other Filoni-verse stuff is just simply because at least there's some sort of attempt to do something with characters here. I know that's like a really low bar, but like Mandalorian just doesn't even do that, Yeah.
Well, just to set the stage a little bit and sort of give you a differentiation between Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. Everything else in the Mandoverse that's come out so far has been mainly helmed by Jon Favreau. I mean, Filoni's of course been involved pretty extensively. They're pretty good friends. He's written and directed plenty of episodes in like Mando and Book of Boba Fett and stuff. But those are, for all intents and purposes, Jon Favreau's babies, whereas this is absolutely Dave Filoni's baby. And there is a pretty noticeable difference in approach. It really feels like, for all the problems this show has and will continue to have, it actually feels like he cares, which is not something I felt after watching Mando season 3. I think I ranted about this in the season 3 coverage. Like, all I want is for you to just give a shit.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because we were talking about this obviously in private after we watched the episodes, and like the kind of conclusion we came to was Ahsoka kind of feels like much more like the prequels, whereas like the rest of the Mandoverse feels much more like the sequels, and with all the attendant problems therein of both sides, right? Like Ahsoka has all of George Lucas's kind of like failure to get actors to give convincing performances, and like very flat, unvaried environments that are lovingly created but then shot quite poorly, story beats that are like, in the abstract could make for an interesting story, but which are just not conveyed well at all. But where the intent is obvious, and at least they're trying. Compared to like the Mandoverse, which is much more like the sequels, and like there is no attempt at all to make a coherent story or to make characterization or anything. It's just chucking visuals on a screen and jangling keys.
Yeah, it is very much like the prequels in the way that it's kind of shot without any real inspiration, but then every once in a while you'll get a visual that's just absolutely stunning. Like the prequels did that with a lot of great cinematography. And like there were a few shots in Ahsoka where I was like, that actually does look really good. And then for the rest of it, it's like, yeah, that's just whatever.
Yeah.
And it's got the stilted acting, and it's got the weird like dialogue isn't necessarily great, not up to snuff, but the ideas are there, and it could be really good. Who's to say, really?
Well, and it's interesting, and I guess we can talk about it later when we get to this scene, but I feel like there's certain parts that just drag on because there's really nothing else happening in the scene. Like the temple scene where she's turning the mechanisms. If she had someone else to talk to during that scene, I think that would mask the fact that like a lot of time is being killed just turning mechanisms,
Well,
oh yeah.
So one scene that I instantly like to compare that one to is the Staff of Ra sequence in Temple or fucking Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's essentially the same thing in that movie. It's just Indy by himself. He doesn't have anyone to talk to, and he's just basically like going through this puzzle and figuring it out, and like looking, going into his journal and writing stuff down, turning mechanisms, figuring out where to position the staff and like in relation to the sun so that it'll light the path. And it's the same kind of thing, but it's way more dynamically shot there. It's better lit. They actually bothered to have like Harrison Ford act in that scene, so it's easier to feel like related to him in that way.
There's also like a much more like engaging soundtrack. Which is such a minor point, but like, and I think it's, I know what they're going for with the scene is different, right? Because in Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's meant to be like building a sense of excitement and tension that you're about to discover something. Whereas with this one, I think there was much more trying to build a kind of sense of like almost horror. Like this is supposed to be like a spooky temple. The problem is like it just doesn't look spooky enough, and like it's just so much time spent walking and nothing happening that like any sense of tension you want to build from that is lost.
It's just not that engaging of a puzzle. Like I think I've felt more challenged by like an obstacle in Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga than like watching Ahsoka figure out you turn this pole and then you like turn that one a little bit and then a thing comes up from the ground. And there it
seems
is.
To be akin to like almost like turning a dial on like a bank vault, where it's like you have to like click it a certain way, so she's like trying to sense where you need to click it or something.
I'm just imagining it turning into like the lock picking mini game from like Skyrim, where she's just there with like a lockpick, like, oh no, I broke my lockpick, damn! I need to go back to the shops and buy another one and come back when I've got a higher level. God damn it!
Well, that's what people have said about it.
Selling lockpicks.
Well, that's the most. That's the most common thing said about it. People have like compared it to like a video game puzzle.
It feels like it, yeah. It feels like I'm watching Cal Kestis meander around on Jeddah, and like we haven't cut any of this gameplay out and like the final. When you're watching like a Let's Play, but like typically they like to cut out all the stuff that's like boring or whatever. Like it's just like a continuous stream.
Well, Sheev, do you remember my sister pointed this out, which is really funny. Like she sent me a photo being like, "Isn't this just the MacGuffin from Treasure Planet?"
It's the Treasure Planet ball. I even looked it up, and like when they activate it, it looks like it looks when Sabine activates it.
It's exactly the same. It's literally just the Treasure Planet ball, and I'm like, that's really
Planet. Like, guys, look up the Treasure Planet ball. It's literally the same exact thing.
It's really funny. Yeah.
People oppose, and it had like green mist and everything too, right? Or like green whatever.
Yeah. But also Jolly, so we're kind of going out of order here, and I want to jump back to the beginning chronologically. But before we do, just to add on to the point you were making about like the music and how it's just more engaging in Raiders, absolutely, nothing tops the Ark of the Covenant theme by John Williams. But also, like I won't even say the music in the show is bad. It's very good. Kevin Kiner is coming back to compose as opposed to the people who've been doing like Mando and Book of Boba Fett. And again, it's like, he was with Clone Wars, he was with Rebels, so like he understands these characters and what kind of music to make, and I think it's pretty good. It's just not nearly as engaging, at least in that particular scene. But we've
well, I guess let's try and get some ordering into how we're going to break this down. So I guess we're going to go through chronologically, right, and just latch onto things as and when they happen. So before we get to that, do we want to have the conversation about continuity and which continuity it's fair to
Yeah,
use.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like that's probably where we want to go next.
Okay. So, do you want to lead this, or shall I?
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, because basically, dear listeners and Odrin, when Sheev and I were first talking about this episode, because what happened was like Sheev hosted a watch party in his server, and I was listening. I was listening in, but I wasn't speaking. I was just sort of listening to everyone else's criticisms. And I got kind of annoyed, like at the tone of a lot of people's criticisms. I mean, it's again, people have been criticizing the show quite badly, but like I just got very annoyed at like the kind of what I saw as like the bad faith interpretations of what was going on. And so I got into a call with Sheev afterwards, and basically the kind of point I raised was like, we have kind of three options on the table, right? When we're analyzing the show, you can either analyze it as like part of the Mandoverse, or like just the entirety of the Disney canon as being like a valid thing to bring into the discussion when talking about what the show should or shouldn't do. View it on its own merits as an isolated story, or view it as like in a kind of some kind of selective continuity, like some kind of quote unquote Filoni verse.
And with Ahsoka, you really can't just judge it by itself. You have to at least take into the fact, factor in like Clone Wars and Rebels and like obviously the original films.
Yeah, I agree, because I think Filoni, well, didn't they even like put out like you should watch this before you watch Ahsoka, which like
I mean Disney Plus catalogs like essential episodes to understanding Ahsoka's story from like Clone Wars and Rebels is like its own category now.
Well, and the thing is, because he did that, you can't have people then trying to defend it being like, no, judge it on its own merits. It's like, no, Dave Filoni himself has literally tied in all these other things.
Well, that's what we're saying. It's like you can't necessarily judge it just by itself, but we're kind of being a little bit selective with which shows we're going to try to factor into this analysis.
Right, and I think it's important to justify why, because like the thing is like it's fair to use either standard, right? It's not that one standard is right and one is wrong. If someone goes like, oh, you have to take the Mandoverse into consideration because that happened, I would be like, okay, that's a fair standard, but by that same dint, Andor loses some quality because it's not taking into account technology that would have radically changed its plot from Clone Wars.
I do you one better. Andor is great because it builds onto this theme of banding together and foregoing your fears and being a rebel and like committing to a cause because that if everyone were to just like get together and like actually take a stand, like the Empire wouldn't stand a chance, and that propels the story going into Rogue One and into the OT of like the Empire ultimately being defeated. But if we are factoring in the larger canon, then also the sequel trilogy exists and kind of undermines everything, making Andor feel pointless. So we're already being pretty selective with which canon we choose, even if we don't really acknowledge it.
Right, and I think that's also like in terms of like being fair to a television show, right? Because the issue with the particularly the Mandoverse, right, and the sequels, is that they have introduced a lot of problems that I think are just fundamentally unfixable, like irreconcilable. You have botched it so badly in some instances that like any show that you then set in a certain time period of Star Wars is just kneecapped immediately by these things, like like the Mandalorian Purge or Luke's character arc going forwards, or the New Republic's incredible idiocy. Like these are things that you cannot fix in Ahsoka. Like you just can't. They're just like they're part of the canon now in a way that Ahsoka can't address. And so if Ahsoka has to wrestle with those, if we're going to attach that baggage to it, then like the best it can do is mitigate some of the damage. It can never be a good show, no matter how well written it is on its own merits, which is like, and that's a fair standard to apply to the canon as a whole, and to to lob as an argument to get at Disney being bad at their jobs. But it does make a discussion about Ahsoka kind of pointless, because we just end up saying things like, well, obviously it was bad. It couldn't have been anything else. Like literally by default, it couldn't have been.
Yeah, there would be no point to doing this breakdown essentially, because we'd be like, yeah, but it's in the Mandoverse, which means it's intrinsically a broken story.
Yeah,
but I agree. You need to approach it from like two different perspectives, like the canon-wide perspective and on its own merits.
That being said, I still do, to an extent, think obviously the show does need to address what Sabine was doing during the Mandalorian Purge, because that's like a big thing that happened in her life, basically, or like happened in this world that she should have been associated with.
Well, I agree, but that comes down to like just making sure we're separating out the two conversations, right? Of being like,
right.
If it is in the Mandoverse, it should have addressed this. It should have tried to mitigate this, because like just being in a broken universe is no excuse for doing nothing. Even if all you can do is like repair a little bit of the damage, you should still try.
What you said to me when we had this call was like, I'm happy for it to ignore things that are just inherently broken, just as concepts, and I'm fine with that. But just on its own, the fact that a Mandalorian purge did take place, I don't think that that's like a broken premise. Like you can still build on that in Ahsoka and make it be like very meaningful.
Oh, I agreed, but my point is like that is part of the continuity. That if you then took the Mando purge into consideration, you'd also have to take the New Republic's idiocies into consideration because we found about the Mando purge in Mando, and like that also introduced a bunch of other stuff that you then have to wrestle with. So the point I'm just making with like the kind of differentiation between like a kind of select Filoni verse that where like we look at Ahsoka as though only the original 6 movies and or Clone Wars and Rebels existed, versus like also incorporating the sequels and Mando. It's not that one is the right, it's not that picking one of those is the right choice versus the wrong choice. It's just that like they lead to different conclusions. Like the Luke Skywalker thing is a really big example of this, right? Like when people are like, why aren't we bringing Luke Skywalker into the story? And I'm like, depending on which continuity we think Ahsoka is happening in, there are 2 very different answers to that question.
Well, I think either way, he would be around because like this is pretty soon after Return of the Jedi, like maybe a few years. Like what would he be doing that's more important than going after Thrawn and making sure the Empire doesn't rise again?
And plus, he did turn up in Mando season 2, which you could argue as part of.
Wait, well, we're not factoring in the Mandoverse just yet.
Oh, okay.
So allow me to clarify then what I meant, right? Like about bringing Luke Skywalker in, right? Which is like if you look at Ahsoka through the continuity of the Mandoverse, it is totally fair to be like, well, she knows Luke. Why isn't Luke being called? What the hell? Whereas in terms of how Luke Skywalker would be getting into the story in a Filoni-verse, where, as far as we know, Ahsoka has never met Luke, it would be the way we would expect Luke to be brought into the story is via the New Republic rather than via Ahsoka. That becomes a criticism of the New Republic then, and not Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's what I assumed, is that the New that was the criticism I was laying out. Is like, why would the New Republic not call him?
Oh no, I agree with you, but it's just important to differentiate between like the 2 sets of criticisms.
Yeah. I think that'll be clear.
Like factoring in the Mandoverse, it is weird that Ahsoka doesn't call Luke since she knows him and knows he would want to get involved with this.
Yeah, and I think it'll be clear like as we go through each of the points individually. I think just by virtue of how we like talk about the criticisms or the merits of the show, I think that'll be clear like from what perspective we're framing it in.
Now, this all being said, we are going to allow Ahsoka this one, but if in future episodes it introduces certain elements that are plot holes that have to, sort of lean on the Mandoverse as a whole as a crutch to explain them away, then it's fair game. It now cannot stand on its own without factoring in the Mandoverse, and that opens the floodgates to just everything else.
That's the thing, right? Like, when you're approaching these 2 episodes, because we only have these 2 episodes, when I say things like a Filoni-verse versus Mandoverse, we can only have that because so far these 2 episodes have not given us any have not forced us to consider these things part of the Mandoverse yet. If in future episodes we have references to like Dr. Pershing and Moff Gideon and all that crap, at that point that all falls apart, and you're like, well, no, this show is now very firmly setting itself in the Mandoverse, so we can't now give it that consideration.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, couldn't you argue that it already has been connected to that by virtue of Morgan Elsbeth, who like was in The Mandalorian?
Well, again, if we're not factoring in anything except for these 6 films in Clone Wars and Rebels and that, then all we know is this is a person who is connected to Thrawn in some way that Ahsoka took prisoner at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's easy enough to just infer that happened.
That's fair, yeah.
And again, like if we were factoring in the Mandoverse here, a criticism I would have would be, why did it take Ahsoka this long to find out where the map was if she captured her all the way back in Mando season 2? Because she just interrogated her and found out where the map is. That's weird.
She doesn't have the door of the Explorer, the ball's not jumping up and down, being like, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map.
True. I also want to say, because someone did just point this out in the comments, I firmly believe Ahsoka should have died on Malachor. I think that would have been a very narratively impactful and satisfying end to her character. Mm-hmm. The fact that she's alive and that fucking time travel had to be introduced just to make that happen means this show needs to justify why she still exists and like what her purpose is going forward. And also, of course, we figure out where she was during the OT.
Oh yeah, that's the main thing. It's like, where the fuck were you during like Luke's fight with the Empire? Jesus Christ.
It needs
Yeah,
to tell us
that is a
where
big
she was during the
question.
OT, but it also needs to tell us like why she still exists and like what purpose that serves in the larger narrative context.
Well, there's when we get to the scene where she meets with Hera on Home One, I have a lot to say about like that conversation. You know.
Yeah. Also, someone in the
Anyway.
comments. Time travel. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys haven't seen Rebels. Basically, like, oh man,
Ezra,
do we even want to explain that right now?
Oh,
yeah,
God.
I'll very quickly rattle through it in like a minute. So basically, on Lothal, there's a Jedi temple where if you basically click the dots in the right place, it opens up a portal to this place called the World Between Worlds, which is like this weird, spooky realm that looks like the inside of the Time Temple from Zelda. And like it allows you access to all points in Star Wars. By the way, it also very strongly implies that the Star Wars universe is deterministic, so make of that what you will.
Yeah.
But like,
to have under
Ezra...
authority is intrinsically a bad thing.
Yeah. Anyway, Ezra sees like a bunch of like flashbacks to like various things that happened and things that are going to happen from his perspective, including Ahsoka's death at Vader's hands on Malachor, and like the weird, I can't remember the actual name of the thing, but the owl bird that's meant to be the sister.
Convor.
Yeah, the daughter avatar.
Owl. Yeah.
Like prompts Ezra to reach through a portal backwards in time and pull Ezra through into the World Between Worlds, out of the way of Vader's blade. Which, what I love about that, like there's lots of funny things about that, but on a personal perspective, what I really love about that is that when Obi-Wan disappears in A New Hope, from Vader's perspective, that's the second fucking time that's happened.
He can't
like
even
people
be sure he's dead, can he? Because
yep.
like assuming like he figured out Ahsoka was alive post Malachor.
Well, it's just like
Ahsoka that Obi-Wan teleported away too, and then he's fine.
I just like the idea that like he swipes at Ahsoka and then she just vanishes, and he swipes at Obi-Wan and then he vanishes, and like afterwards he like goes back to his quarters on the Death Star. It's like, maybe I need new eye lenses. What's going on? I'm so confused.
Yeah. So basically, like from a meta standpoint, yeah, Dave Filoni literally introduced time travel into the Star Wars canon because he wanted to make it so that his OC didn't die in the moment that would have been the most narratively impactful.
Oh, and Palpatine knew about it as well. That's the other thing. Palpatine knew that time travel existed. He was after it.
So that's the thing. Palpatine knew. I mean, would he have told Vader about the world?
I don't know.
Because I mean, if he would have, he should have
told
been
Vader
like,
about Exegol.
Yeah. So like he should have been like, yeah. Also, I saw Ahsoka in there. I thought you said you killed her. He's like, well, I told you. She fucking disappeared into a void. I don't know what happened.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Oh god. Anyway, yeah. So let's put all that to one side and just go. Let's go through this in order then. So Ahsoka. We start off with title crawl. Yeah.
I don't like this title crawl. I think it looks very visually uninteresting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I mean, I have a lot to say about it. It's just like it's a very bland and basic font, an ugly color to contrast with the black background, and it's like scrolling up vertically rather than slanted because I guess they're trying to be different from the films, but it just looks way less engaging. Not a fan.
It gives me Solo flashbacks.
At least, come on. At least with Solo, they bothered to like, make it fade in and out, and like it was kind of a thing. It wasn't just text scrolling up a screen, like not even in a dynamic fashion. It's just happening.
I mean, I wonder if because sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick. It felt like fan film style, like title crawl.
Yeah. No, that's an insult to fan films, I think, because a fan film could have made a title crawl that looked like a regular title. Like I could fucking go to a title crawl generator and make one that looks like one.
Well, I wonder if because obviously the Star Wars title crawl. I mean, everyone knows the Star Wars title crawl was based on like the old Flash Gordon serials.
Yeah.
This looks a lot closer in style to those Flash Gordon serials. I mean, but then again, the Flash Gordon was happening in like the 60s and 70s when like they didn't really have the editing tech to make like
and
especially good crawls.
A friend of mine that I was talking about this with said it gave him sort of Blade Runner vibes, which I get. But the thing about the Blade Runner title crawl is that like that's happening with like this really ominous, foreboding music in the background to set up like the feel of what's to come. It's very ominous and eerie. Whereas this is just like, yeah, it's happening, and then boom, we're in an episode that's pretty slapstick and not at all, that like terrifying, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
Madzo just asked in the chat, why was it red? Is there any reason for it? Now, if I remember correctly, I think the last arc of the Clone Wars, the Siege of Mandalore arc, had red
Yeah,
lettering.
Yes.
Maybe it has something to
I'm
do with
assuming.
that. I don't know.
Which I also found the font in that to be extremely bland, and I don't know. I think Dave Filoni just likes this font. I don't know. He used it in all the trailers too, and I was like, that looks just so boring.
The thing I question is just I don't understand. I mean, someone brought up Rogue One in the chat, and I kind of agree, right? Of like, I don't understand why we have a title crawl at all for this show. I don't think it provides any information that we couldn't have found out organically just from the opening scenes.
Well, I mean, I know this is more a continuation of Rebels than of Clone Wars, but like, if you wanted to, you could kind of do a Clone Wars style like Tom Kane narration intro. I know Tom Kane's retired now, but I'm pretty sure this would have been filmed and everything before he retired. I don't know. Something more than just a title crawl.
I just like that they're bringing back like the Yularen style things, where it's like war in the outer rim.
I think it's
also like you don't even need a title crawl. You could just start the show. It's fine.
Yeah, just do a Rogue One. Go straight to it.
Yeah, or do any other show that's in Star Wars that just opens up the show. Doesn't waste your time with a title crawl.
I mean, to be fair,
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, after you.
Well, it's not like it even gave us really information that we didn't already know.
Sheev, Odrin was trying to talk.
Sorry.
It's okay. I was just going to say, I would posit that the title crawl causes more problems like existing than if it didn't exist. Because my main sticking point for this title crawl, if I can jump ahead just a little bit, is I can't remember the exact wording, but I think it's mentioned the last Imperial Grand Admiral would galvanize the Imperial remnants to start another war. Now, one thing I want to point out right off the bat is because Ahsoka mentions it later in the episode as well. She refers to Thrawn as the last Grand Admiral, and he is not the last Grand Admiral. That would Sloane is actually out there as well. But then again, Dave Filoni hasn't read any of the books, so he wouldn't know about that.
Again, I think you just extend it like the kind of like this is a different continuity faith, right? At that point,
right. If we're trying to say the original 6 films, Clone Wars and Rebels are all we're factoring into this, and we can throw in Andor and Rogue One too because they don't fuck with anything. They're neat little stories. Then it's fine not to include Rey Sloane, even though again, in a larger canonical context, she is out there. Love to know what happened to her.
Yeah,
Mando season 3 also ignored her existence.
Yeah, it's like, why would the Imperials not have like rallied around her? Like, if we're factoring in the Mandoverse, and if that comes up later, why would they not already rally around her? I guess they just prefer Thrawn,
color,
as opposed to an alien of color.
Well, I think the Empire may be sexist and or racist, but not nearly as much as they are xenophobic. So pick your poison and all.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, like I said, I don't think the title crawl really gave us any new information. And in fact, I have it pulled up here. I can read it off to you guys. The evil galactic... First of all, terrible grammar in this title crawl, by the way, but I'm going to try my best. The evil galactic empire has fallen, and a new republic has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the lost Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. Once presumed dead, rumors are spreading of Thrawn's return, which would galvanize the Imperial remnants and start another war. Former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano captured one of Thrawn's allies and learned of a secret map which is vital to the enemy's plans. Ahsoka now searches for the map as her prisoner Morgan Elsbeth is transported to the New Republic for trial. First of all, I read that initially as Ahsoka now seethes, which I thought was funny.
But she
this isn't really any. She does go. This isn't really any information we didn't already know, other than I guess Ahsoka is now looking for the map, and
which is another freaking map MacGuffin. Oh my god.
Yeah. We'll get to that when we get to the map scene. But also, just in terms of the title call, still like it's information that we find out anyway organically in the first 10 minutes. I don't see why we need this.
I guess all we really know that like we couldn't have deduced from the scene is like. That's why Morgan is being transported instead of just already in a cell because she's like on her way to a trial. But again, if we're factoring in the Mandoverse, it's like, why are we only just now giving her a trial? She was captured in Mando season 2.
Yeah.
Also, we could have found, as an audience, you can find this out anyway. Like, we see a prisoner being broken out, and we're like, oh, she's important. And then, like, Hera contacts Ahsoka to be like, hey, you remember that prisoner you brought us? She's gotten out. And we're like, oh, okay, so that's what that is.
Yeah.
Superfluous.
Well, here's I think is the problem. I want to consider something like if we're not factoring in the Mandoverse, what would be I think a little bit confusing at that point is like, oh, Ahsoka has captured a prisoner and brought her to the New Republic. Like, since when is she like working with like the New Republic?
Yeah, she went with Rebels.
I mean, again, this show needs to tell us where she was during the OT.
And yeah, that's true. She worked with the Rebels, but that was like 10 to 12 years prior to this.
Well, what I'm saying is like they could explain that she was still helping the rebellion in certain aspects, like during the OT, just somewhere that didn't allow her to be there when Luke was confronting Vader. Also, there's a super chat I'd like to read out before we continue from Wisdom Minari for $5. Thank you very much for the super chat. Why does Ahsoka want to train anyone? Why is she acting stoic and removed like a Jedi when her big thing is she's not a Jedi? She's her own thing. Bleh. These are all points we are going to get to. Do we want to address them now or just wait?
No, I think let's wait till we address them organically in the story. But don't worry, Wisdom, we are going to get to them.
Yeah, we'll get to them. Stick around for like 6 hours.
I mean, all I will say for now is a good question.
But thank you for the super chat. Also, that was great. I can finally eat.
Sheev can finally afford to get another Macca's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we get to Total Call happens, and then we have the New Republic starship, prisoner ship, on its way to wherever it's transporting its prisoners to, and the captain is told by his crew that there is an incoming ship, a very small shuttle, and that they are being hailed with old Jedi codes.
Yeah. Now, so these people that are boarding, who we'll just spoil for you, are the rogue Jedi characters you might have seen in the trailers, Baylan and Shin. They're hailing them under the pretense that they're Jedi, and they're using an old Jedi frequency, which the captain doesn't believe. I'm assuming the reason he doesn't believe it is just because, like, maybe the Empire might have had access to Jedi frequencies after taking over, so maybe like that's been used as a ploy in the past.
Also just because it's been so long, right? Like if someone was like, if we wiped out every single Royal, American Marine in existence, and then 30 years down the line, someone was like, "I'm a Marine, let me on board your ship." I'd be like, aha.
Well, yeah. So like he doesn't believe them, and obviously, like, sure, yeah, of course he doesn't. But then for some reason, instead of just denying them access to the ship, or just shooting them or detaining them or something, he's like, yeah, just let them board, and I'll personally go out and greet them just to tell them that they're not Jedi and that I'm calling them on their shit.
Yeah, like the most obvious course of action would be transmit your clearance codes, and if they refuse to do that, you blow them away.
Yeah, well, so they're already using a Jedi frequency, so I guess that's supposed to be their clearance code. At the same time, it's like, so I don't believe you. Let me if you really are who you say you are, then you are, allies to us. Let me detain you. We'll take you somewhere that, like, we're also waiting for Home One to rendezvous with us. So like, we'll wait for our main flagship to come in. We'll take you aboard, and like we can interrogate you and get to the bottom of this. Don't just let them board without any kind of detainment, and then just like personally greet them with nothing but a guard detail that's not even armed and ready to fire at a moment's notice.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? Because there's a way to make this work. Because obviously, what they're going for here is like the captain is cocky and sure of his own superiority, and is therefore calling what he sees as a fairly feeble bluff, right? There's a way to do this. So you could have had like a throwaway line when they're like, "Oh, there's a ship incoming," and he's like, "What's the ship?" And it's like, "It's a small shuttle with Jedi codes." You could have done something like, scan it for life forms, scan it to make sure it's not full of fucking bombs, like it's not on a kamikaze run or something. And then you could have had someone be like, "Yeah, there's only 2 life forms on board, and we're not detecting any weapons of any kind." And at that point, the captain can be like, "Really, only 2 people? Maybe these are Jedi, and if they're not, then it's only 2 people, and we can just arrest them and find out what the fuck's going on." So why don't we lie to them for now and say, "Yeah, sure, come on board," and then I'll bring down 50 security guys and just arrest them. Like, that's what you do.
And the scene would have played out the same way because, like, and the scene would have played out the same way because, like, Baylan and Shin would have just cut down the guards that are trying to detain them, and it would have played out the same anyway.
Yeah,
except that like the New Republic would have been essentially the attackers by like holding guns at them, but like still, like this was going to happen regardless because they're there to break Elsbeth out of prison. Also, Joe just sent in a $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Joe. Hello, sweet princess. Please grift responsibly. Oh,
we will.
Actually, what he says is grift responsibility. I always grift responsibility.
I simply, with great grift comes great responsibility. Thank you, Joe. Love ya.
Love you, Joe.
Anyway, yeah, so pretty dumb. And this was not a great first impression of the show, but like, you know, it's not as bad going forward. I think this was probably the dumbest part, like the dumbest sequence.
I guess it's the funny thing, right? Of like, at least at this point, the idiocy of the New Republic is being kept on point. Like, there's a continuity to that at least.
Oh yeah.
Well, again, if we're not factoring in the Mandoverse, then we have seen nothing to indicate that the New Republic is stupid. So
that's true. Yeah, this is the first time actually. In the Filoniverse, this is the first time we've ever seen the New Republic.
Well, that we have.
Way to establish a precedent, guys.
Yeah, I mean the one, I guess, positive thing that I will say, at least just for me, is that like I don't know, I find Baylan and Shin like mildly enjoyable to watch compared to the other characters. Like I'm somewhat interested in them.
I could say this now. Like I was going to say this to the end, but like I'm pretty intrigued by Baylan and Shin. Mostly Baylan, but you know I have nothing against Shin. He seems like a genuinely, like potentially very interesting character, depending on what they do with him. I'm already getting a sense of sort of a complex relationship or feelings toward the Jedi as a whole. He's obviously like very regretful to like have to go up against someone who he sees as like one of the last vestiges of an order he was once part of. You know, there's something there. They could really do something with that.
That's the thing, right? When people are going, because I've seen this, right? Like, oh, these characters, nothing. You know, all these characters, there's nothing to them, and I'm like, there is. Like, it's not particularly well fleshed out. It's not. I mean, again, we're only 2 episodes in, but that's just still even more than we've got, right? But like, it's not particularly well fleshed out. Yeah. But it's there. It's not like Mando where there is literally nothing. Like we have these little hints with both Shin and Baylan and Sabine and Ahsoka. And even sort of Hera, although Hera's quite damaged, that there is more to them than meets the eye. Particularly with Baylan and Shin. Actually, I think I'm more interested in them than I am in anyone else in the show right now.
Yeah,
I mean, same here. I think
the thing that interests me about them, you know, like you just said, Baylan, he's regretful having to fight last remaining Jedi, but he's also, I guess, got grander ambitions that I guess take priority. So even though he regrets it, he'll do what he has to achieve, I guess,
power
in his
such
mind,
as you've never seen before.
Yeah, some sort of higher goal. And when it comes to Shin, the thing I guess I find interesting about her is that given her age, it seems like he would have picked her up after Order 66. So it's just interesting, like, to think about how he would have like molded her in a post Order 66 time period, you know.
Well, also just her competence as well, because like Baylan would have been what, like between 25 and 30 when Order 66 happened, so a knight, or either you know, finishing up being a Padawan or a Jedi Knight, which means that he's had
probably like
presumably quite a long time.
Like he probably just like finished the trials.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Which means that he's someone who's picked up Shin presumably from a young age and has competently trained her from a young age. So she herself is effectively like one of the few people left in this galaxy who's had a proper Jedi training. Like, and is therefore going to be like a very competent character, one of the most remaining competent characters in terms of like force abilities and lightsaber abilities left in this galaxy. And we'll get to the fight she has with Sabine when we get to it, but like so far I am reasonably happy with how she's been portrayed as being very competent.
Yeah, I agree.
Overwatch channel, thank you for the super chat, $5. Ahsoka's personality is so different than Clone Wars, and Shin, is it Hati? 80?
Hattie.
Yeah.
Hattie.
I don't know how it's
Shin
pronounced.
Hattie is actually stealing the show, best character. I don't know if she's stealing the show. I like her. Again, nothing against her so far. We just really don't know anything about her yet. Which is, I mean, she's already in a better state than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting her to be cringe, if I'm honest. Like, she looks super emo in the trailers, and I was like, I can already see it. I can already see like she's fucking like blasting My Chemical Romance while she fights Sabine.
That's the thing. I was expecting her to be like a very like cackling, over the top, mad, almost like Alice from Batwoman-esque character. Bit, yeah. So far, she's been very reserved and like quietly effective, and I'm like, that's really interesting. There's even like little character moments where she gets annoyed at like Morgan, for example, where Morgan gives her the incredibly vague instruction, and then she waits for her to leave, and she goes like, "Master, what the fuck's up with that? Like, what do I do?"
Yeah, I like that.
I remember just laughing about that because she's like, "Send this one to Lethal," and then just walks away. It's like, what do you got to give her more than that? Come on.
She's like, "Bitch, what?"
Yeah, that's things like
But
Shin's
anyway,
like, what?
Yeah, but so Balin and Shin board, and they take out all these people, and they're just there to break out Morgan, which they're successful at because the captain is an idiot. He's a dumb fucking dummy person. His name is Captain Hale, by the way. I'm just noting that.
They hailed Captain Hale. Lol.
Pretty much, yeah. And so that was
we
the first
scene.
Hail her, I hardly know her.
Oh god. And then then we have the temple scene. So what we get our movement to Ahsoka is walking very slowly around a temple room on an unknown planet. This temple, we'll find out later, was built by the Dathomirian Night Sisters about 2,500 years ago, I think, is what they say. And Ahsoka is there looking for something.
Like date, like just
No,
thousands of years ago. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I think Morgan says like,
I'll take your word
built
for it. I just don't remember.
Ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something around that. Like it's thousands of years anyway. It's been a while, is what I'm saying.
It's been a bit of time. Things have changed.
It's been a hot minute. The Dathomirian's been out of the game for a while. It's a whole thing. Anyway, yeah. So like, she's there looking for the treasure planet MacGuffin, and she finds it after the world's most simple clockwork puzzle, because the Dathomirians apparently really cared about hiding their secrets, but not enough to actually make it hard to find. One
thing I'm wondering is, so Morgan didn't know how to activate this puzzle, right? Like that's. I'm trying to figure that out because I mean it's a pretty simple puzzle. Like Sabine figures it out in like 20 seconds, but like she's also super smart and ingenuitive or whatever. But like if she did know how to activate it, I'm talking about Morgan. Why was she not already using it when she knew exactly where it was?
Well, I mean she was in prison. To be fair to her.
No, I mean,
it's hard to go on day
trips.
trips.
She knew where it was before she was arrested. Surely, obviously, it's been there for God knows how long, and she knew about.
Well, I guess again, that's the Mandoverse continuity again of like if in that continuity, why wasn't she there already? Did she know Thrawn was out there at that point, or was she just doing her own thing? I don't know.
No, we can use it.
I don't know that is just like Mandoverse because from what we know just from this show. Is like, yeah, she's a prisoner who is in some way connected to and trying to find Thrawn. She knows about this temple and about the map and where to find it. And she wasn't always a prisoner. She was arrested by Ahsoka at some point and then told Ahsoka about the map, which means she knew about it presumably before being imprisoned. So we know that she was running Imperial operations on Corellia, for example. So she was free to come and go as she pleased at one point. She could have gone here.
The question I have is, we don't know when she started, like when the quest for the map started for her, or even like whether or not she knew where the map was initially, or and always had that information, or whether she had to go find it.
Right, because the reason that she has reason to believe that Thrawn is out there is because she started hearing like his voice in her head or something.
Yeah, which I mean, just get a CAT scan.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that line, really. I'm a little confused by that line. I'm gonna have to see if maybe you guys have a better explanation, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll shelve that for now. Ahsoka gets the map. She jumps back out of the neat little hole that she cut without bending her knees, and therefore has fractured knees. It's like the Deadpool joke of like superhero landings.
Bend your knee. Yeah, well, so she does that, and then there's like a later part when she's on Corellia where she jumps out a window and lands and doesn't bend her knees. And both times it immediately made me think of that Robot Chicken bit where like Palpatine and Vader were talking. And he was just making Vader continue to kneel, even though they weren't talking. He was like, "Bet that knee's starting to
hurt." Well, yeah. I just love how the platform, like she's standing on top of the thing that she just cut a hole through, and I love how it like comes down really slowly. Like it's almost like you could tell that it was attached to wires or something.
Can you imagine if she'd cut the hole in the wrong place and it had landed on top of where the map was supposed to come out?
That would have been unfortunate. Yeah, she
She's
did
like,
kind
"Oh,
of just make an educated guess, didn't she? She was like, "I'm just gonna cut here. This seems like as good a spot as any."
She should have cut like a tiny hole to like look inside first.
or just find the door. Like I imagine this temple
There's
had a
gotta
door
be
at
a
one
door.
point.
Yeah, this wasn't just like built and then not given any kind of way of entry.
Like these guys didn't build it and then seal it up from
Yeah.
the inside and die in there. Like they clearly left.
Maybe
so
Maybe they did.
maybe there was a cave.
Maybe
in or
that's where
something.
Jesus' tomb was, but then they like. Oh, yeah,
Jesus
another
has the
chat.
Treasure Planet MacGuffin in his tomb.
Yes. Another $5 from Wisdom Minari. Why are lightsabers no longer lethal? Why is Sabine force sensitive? Why droids announce self-destruct? Do bad TV movies beat Rob, Sheev, LMAO?
We
So
will
again,
address
these
these
are
questions
things
in
we're all
good
going to
time.
address. I mean, the thing about the droids announcing their self-destruct, I'm fine with that. Like, it's pretty apparent already, even if they don't vocalize it, that like they're about to do it when the bombs shoot out of their chest and start blinking. Like, I think you can pretty much guess what's about to happen, can't you? There's no
I
real
guess
way
it comes
for
down
them to hide that.
Well, I guess it comes down to the programming protocol, right? Like, if these droids are designed to work in concert with your own troops, then you want to give your own troops a heads up when they're about to detonate.
True, that too.
Yeah.
That might be why they announce it. But again, I've no idea. I agree that on its own, as absent of that kind of context, it's a little bit silly, but it's not a huge problem or anything. It's just a bit funny. That they're like, by the way, I'm about to go off.
Well, I want
Go
I
off,
want
sis.
to go off. I want to address the second point. Why do bad TV shows and movies tend to steal your kidneys and stuff, Sheev?
I don't know. They just don't like me. They just think that I personally have done some kind of slight against them, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what it is. I don't know.
It's
They're gonna
Kenobi
come for
was
your
the
heart.
ringleader. Kenobi was the ringleader, but it was sort of like a gangbang. They were like, "Yeah, fuck that kid," and then like he's like, while I'm still down, just like writhing in pain, they're like, "Let's take his pancreas too."
They're coming for all of them.
In completely unrelated news, my illegal organ business is going really well. Thank you for asking.
Another super chat. Should I just be saving these to the end, or do we want to? Because I don't want to keep obstructing the flow of conversation.
Let's just do it quickly now, because this is a very short one.
Okay,
Yeah, like
sure.
if you start
Another
getting more and
from
more of
Jordan
them.
Flux. Advertise Discord. Also check.
Yeah, you do need to
DMs.
advertise your Discord.
Hey, yeah, I do. I don't know what you people are talking about. I have a Discord server. It's linked in the description. Go to it. Fuck.
Yep.
I
anyway,
advertise my Discord server.
Anyway, she exits the temple and is stopped by a sinisterly posing robot that is like, "Give us the map," and she's like, "Us," and then like a bunch of other assassin droids turn up to fuck up her day and take the map.
I like how this droid
And
sounds exactly like Kylo Ren and is also asking for a map to be handed over. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, it's actually Kylo never actually spoke. He just had a recording of this robot.
We know you found it, and now you're going to give it to the First Order.
And then Ahsoka's like, "You didn't come from the dark," and it's like, "I'll show you the dark." Yeah, so she
ally.
You were merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. So anyway, she cuts down all these droids, except for like a couple that she like pulls into the temple, basically. And then they climb back out, tell her that they're initiating a self-destruct sequence, and then this is an important detail for later. Out of their chest comes a bomb.
Yes.
So which starts blinking, and she makes a dash for it. She calls in Hu Yang, who she's apparently picked up off screen. And David.
Yeah, where has he been? I'd like to know. Has he? Because like he was a Jedi droid. Surely he would have been like wherever the Jedi were when the Empire took over. Did they not just reprogram him, make him imperially loyal, or did he like escape?
Oh, you mean like after Order 66? Yeah, like where?
Yeah, because he's just here now, and it's like, where have you been? What have you been doing these last like 30 years? What's been going on, man?
He was filming Good Omens and Doctor Who. That's what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, like, because he is a massive wealth of knowledge on the Jedi Order. You would think that, assuming he wasn't hidden away, that the Empire would have wanted to dismantle him and the knowledge that he
figure out
contained.
like all of its secrets.
I mean, he was on a special little Jedi ship, right? Like, so I imagine there wouldn't have been any clones around him when Order 66 went off. So the second he became aware that things were going down, he may have just gone into hiding. It might have been one of his protocols.
That's true.
Anyway, yeah. So Hoyang picks her up, and in the nick of time as well, because these bombs go off. And when I say these bombs go off,
they go
holy
off.
Fuck!
It's like a nuclear explosion down there. It's actually insane.
I have questions as to like if you can get a bomb this dangerous in a in a bomb casing that small, why are these things not more widespread? Are they just really expensive or something? Because like, god damn.
Well, we do find out that they were built on Corellia and like specifically by the people who work for Morgan Elsbeth. So maybe they're new.
Maybe.
Yeah, and if Morgan has an interest in getting that map because she wants to find Thrawn, why then would she want that to potentially be destroyed by the bomb?
This is the second point.
Yeah. So they want to recover the map because Morgan wants it for finding Thrawn. If I'm Morgan and I've sent these droids to recover it, I would rather that Ahsoka escapes with the map and it still be intact than Ahsoka and the map both be destroyed in this explosion, and then I just have no way to find Thrawn. So you should have been under no circumstances should you ever activate that nuclear bomb in your chest.
Yeah, and also to make this really clear, right? Because there are going to be some people who, in fact, I've actually heard this, right, where some people were like, "Oh yeah, but the map would survive, right? Like it would just kill her." And I'm like, "No, Baylan is very clear when they go to this place when he's like, if the map was here, it's not anymore. Like that, if it was on here when this thing went off, it's fucked now."
Well, yeah, he literally says either. Yeah. Why would it be bomb-proof? That's a good question. And yeah, like Baylan literally says, either the Jedi took it or it was, destroyed, vaporized.
Yeah.
So the self-destruct is not a good move.
Baylan should have just called Morgan a dumbass in that scene.
I mean, to be fair, I think he's kind of implying it, right?
Now, so hopefully it'll be fine. Like no delays or anything. It's kind of giving me shit right now. My Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
I was just saying, I think Baylan does kind of call her a dumbass implicitly, right? When he makes that line, there's something about the way he looks at her where he's like, either she's gotten away with this or it's completely fucked. You do get that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like this. So I guess we're implying she gave them the order. It's like, why? Are you stupid? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, who else? Well, that's the thing I'm confused about. If she sent these droids, when would she have done that if she was in prison?
I don't know. It's not like she's Kingpin or something. She has influence on the outside. But I mean, she must, right? Because she paid Baylan to break her out.
So you see what happened was she used her one phone call that she's legally allowed to phone these robots, and was like, "I need you to do a job for me."
Oh, and the New Republic is so stupid that they're not listening in on the call.
Well, it's a violation of her constitutional rights to listen in to a call with her lawyer. So.
What rights, you sons of bitches?
Precisely. Exactly. Oh my god. So yeah, she gets away, and there's a line that kind of irks me slightly, where Hoyang is talking to her about how she knew the map was there and now she's got all this information, and she's like, "Oh, I interrogated someone who knows," and then she's like, as a little smirk, and goes like, "I didn't do that in the Jedi way." And I was like, "What do you mean, Ahsoka? Did you torture them?"
Well, also, why is she having to? This feels like exposition, right? He should know this, right? Because he's her companion. They've been traveling together. Why would he not know how she found out where the map was already? Is this just for the audience's benefit?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Also, there's another bit of dialogue here where she asks him why he was so far away from the site while she was exploring it. And because she tried to contact him while in the temple and he was all fritzy, and then she got attacked. And he says that's standard Jedi protocol. And I'm just like, why would it be though? Why would you not just have the ship parked near where she is? Surely that would be the protocol. And then she says, you should have been there to have my back. And he's like, that is the job of a Jedi Padawan, which I am not. Sort of implying, you had a Padawan and you fucking left her. And I'm still not exactly cool with you for that. I think that was a stupid idea on your part. Implying what we're eventually going to come to learn about her relationship with Sabine, which is all fine and good. But I'm still just like, no, Huyang, you fucked up. You should have been there. He should have been.
Hoyang was actually trying to get her very nearly killed just to teach her a lesson. Whereas like, yeah, see, if I hadn't been there at the last moment, if only you had an apprentice, you dumb fuck.
Yeah. But anyway.
Next scene.
So then they get contacted by Home One. I think that's the next thing that happens, and they get called over to Hera's there. Hera's like, "Hey guys, guess what happened? A prisoner that you brought in was broken out by 2 dark Jedi-looking people. They have like the same powers as you."
I guess one side note, why did they have to bring Hera? Why did they have to bring Ahsoka there at all? Why couldn't they just like tell her this by phone?
I don't know. Maybe they thought. I mean, this isn't really even a good excuse anyway, because you can just transfer the images over. But like, maybe they thought if she got a good look at them, that she might be able to identify one or both of them. I don't know.
No, I'll tell you the reason.
Or maybe they wanted to have a chat with Ahsoka.
No, it's because remember Home One? Remember Return of the Jedi?
And also Empire Strikes Back. Let's not forget it was in that movie as well.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, reference.
Yeah, and I clapped.
We jangled them keys.
I mean, I'm fine with that. Like, why would they not use that ship still, even now? I mean, aside from the fact that they're apparently decommissioning their fleet, but the Mandoverse.
Yeah, like also like it's not that they've got the Home One. That's not my issue. It's like we have Home One, but we needed to bring Ahsoka to look at it so that the audience could look at it. It's like, well,
yeah,
okay.
Well, and so what I was going to say was like a small nitpick. This probably doesn't even mean anything, but it annoyed me that Hera said they have powers like you to Ahsoka, when it's like, yeah, you also traveled with 2 Jedi for a few years there. Like,
you know what the Force is.
I don't know. Like, you know what the Force is. You know what the Jedi are. You know, like you're very familiar with the way they operate, basically.
Well, it feels more like what the Mandalorian does, where it treats the Jedi and the Force as just this ancient thing that's completely vague and nobody in this universe knows about. Even though you have people who literally lived through like the prequel era and stuff, it almost feels like kind of the same sort of mentality here.
Which I'm fine with,
like at least in the OT,
like ever directly encountered. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, at least in the OT, like everyone was acting like the Jedi were dead because, for all intents and purposes, they were, and like the Empire was going to great lengths to like snuff out any mention of them in history and like just act like they weren't ever a thing. That's why even though it's only been 20 years, they're still talking to Vader like he's devoted to some sad, ancient, long forgotten religion, when in reality, not 2 decades ago, they were like the height of power in the galaxy.
Well, yeah, it's like they bought into their own propaganda, you know.
But like with Mando, it's just like this guy has Force powers like a Jedi, and Mando's like, "What's a Jedi?" Like, come on.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You know what a Jedi is.
People should know what the Jedi are in the abstract. I'm perfectly fine, even during the prequel era. I'm fine with most people thinking of the Jedi as like some kind of quasi-mystical, religious, like abstract, ancient order that they got no idea about. Just because like the galaxy is very large and there's only 20,000 Jedi. But yeah, Hera should not be one of those people.
She's literally like the mother of one of their children. So
yeah, she fell in love with a Jedi.
She's very familiar with the Jedi, like more so than pretty much anyone else in the galaxy that's not directly a Jedi.
Yeah, it's just a weird way of like, it's just a weird piece of dialogue to describe that, you know?
Yeah. And it just put me off. I was like, oh, don't do that.
Not a big thing.
Not a big thing.
We still have the lingering question as well of like, now that we've introduced Ahsoka to the New Republic again on screen, of where the fuck were you during the OT, Ahsoka?
Yep.
Like, please, can we get an answer to this?
Yeah, so
have that in mind.
Yeah, this is a big thing that I really felt while watching this scene in particular. There's just this feeling, and I think I posted something like this on Twitter as well. I just can't shake off this feeling that Ahsoka just doesn't really belong here in this timeline. This post Return of the Jedi timeline. And I think I told Sheev, but I think the reason for that is that they still have yet to really bridge the gap between what happened to her on Malachor and like where she's at now. It's just strange to see her like coming and going onto like the flagship of the New Republic. Yeah. Like I don't know. I couldn't shake that feeling.
Like that's what I was saying earlier, was like it would have been narratively the most impactful to have her die on Malachor, and now seeing her here in this post Return of the Jedi era just feels unnatural, and they haven't justified why they undid what would have been a perfect send-off to her character. Now she's just here, and it's like they need to justify her purpose going forward. Like, it's not going to be enough to explain where she was during the OT. They do need to do that, but they also need to justify why she is here now and like where she's going, basically what her story is leading to.
Yeah, I also hate it because it fundamentally undermines like Return of the Jedi quite badly, right? When Yoda's like, "Oh, the last of the Jedi you will be," to Luke, it's like except for Ahsoka, who's a fully trained Jedi Master at this point, and except for like Cal Kestis and Ezra and Kanan and
well, we don't know
Balin and Shin
alive.
I hope he's not. And no offense to this is one of the things. I like his character. I like the story more or less. I'm so tired of the stakes of Return of the Jedi being fundamentally undermined by Luke not actually being the last Jedi.
I trust the people writing the Survivor games, or the Jedi games, I should say, enough to believe that they will kill Cal off at the end. Like, they won't just be like, yeah, he's still around, actually.
Well,
just don't worry about it.
I trust them. I mean, let me preface this by saying I'm a big fan of those games. I trust them in either direction. Like, if they kill him off or if they keep him alive, I trust that they will do it in such a way that's satisfying to me.
Yeah.
But we'll see,
Maybe.
What about Merrin, Joe? She's not a Jedi.
Yeah, Merrin's not a Jedi.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine she's around. She can't... I mean, what... Well, Night Sisters are OP as fuck, but like in terms of like being a Jedi, like that's a different thing.
I mean, Merrin's contribution to the show is just more of a conversation about Morgan Elspeth being a Night Sister, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, we're going to get
serious questions.
I hate Night Sisters so much. Let me read out a super chat real quick from She Talks Hate. I don't know what figure this is, so I don't know how much this was donated, but he said, "Stop hating on a good show because you want views and spread your own communist propaganda. Also, putting the link in the description isn't advertising. It's Shut up! I advertise my Discord server sometimes.
Yeah,
what do you want me to do? Like,
you advertise a product. You advertise a product, you communist.
Yeah, I'm a grifter. Like, what am I supposed? Seriously, do you guys want me to just fucking promote it and like on Twitter every week?
What I want is for you to
do?
I want you to tattoo the URL onto your forehead and walk around. That's what I want.
Oh, real quick, Vaughn. I'm sorry, it passed me by that comment.
Vaughn Lustre.
Vaughn Lustre. Yeah, I think that was a good point. People argue that Luke being the last Jedi means that he's the last hope for the Jedi. Like, yeah, it seems like that's what it's been recontextualized into.
Well, no, but the point is, like, he isn't now. That's my point, right? Like, is it like, imagine this: like, Luke dies in Return of the Jedi, and Vader and the Emperor, Vader dies as well, and the Emperor just carries on trucking, and the Empire carries on. That's not the end of the Jedi anymore, because we have Ahsoka, who's a fully trained Jedi Master.
I guess.
Well, also, if I'm Yoda and I'm Obi-Wan, and I need someone to go after and kill Vader, I'm gonna trust Ahsoka, who's a lot more competent and fully trained, and who's also already like, come to terms with the fact that Anakin is Vader and like what that means for her. I'm going to trust her to take care of the job rather than Luke, who is, just getting started essentially, and who just found out that Vader is his father and is actively telling you, I will not kill him.
Or like,
or I don't know.
Or maybe both of them. That way they stand a better chance.
Maybe both of them.
Yeah, like they stand a better chance of defeating him together.
Also, Sam Montgomery gave a £2 super chat. Hera kind of forgot about Kanan.
I mean, the show certainly has. So,
I mean, at some point you got to wonder, like, what even is this plot?
Oh God! Because that's in the intro to my multiverse video. Like, the amount of times I've heard that sentence now in the last couple of days on repeats.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't like specifically need a Kanan reference yet. I mean, it's a little weird about the line that we just talked about from Hera. But I don't need like an explicit like name drop for Kanan necessarily.
I would like.
No, it's more just an acknowledgement.
Yeah, I mean, the show did give us a Kanan reference when Sabine cut her hair. It was shot and framed exactly the same way as Kanan's haircut scene.
I still need that to be memed where someone puts the Mulan music over
that. Also, getting back to the episode. So again, not factoring in the Mandoverse, but we know for a fact that canonically Hera knows Luke, and so does Rex, because they both fought in the Battle of Endor. That's said in Rebels. So she should be calling Luke and telling him, "Hey, I know you're a Jedi and you're trying to start up your own order. You probably want to know about these people that just broke into our ship and stole a valuable prisoner, and who are also actively working to bring back the last Imperial Grand Admiral and try to revive the Empire." Like he'd want to know about that.
Oh yeah.
So any excuse that he's like too busy or whatever, no, shut up.
Yeah, he's not too busy. He's not too busy for the greatest threat to the New Republic since its inception.
Yeah. Like he should certainly be there, like with Ahsoka when they're discussing this, because the one caveat I sort of gave, I spoke to TK about this, was that I guess it sort of makes sense to go to Ahsoka first, just because Morgan was her prisoner. However, because the two assailants are like former Jedi, I think that's relevant to Luke as well, and he should absolutely be in the room too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he should.
Well, and here's the thing. I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying that he needs to be in the show. Like I'm not, throwing away my entire position on cameos and fan service and key jangling because I'm like, oh, I want to see Luke Skywalker. I'm saying it doesn't make sense for him not to show up. So if you don't want to put him in the show, you need to write in a very good explanation for why he can't be there. Like what he's doing that's somehow more important than stopping this impending threat of the Empire returning.
He's busy not training anybody.
Because you compare this to Heir to the Empire, because obviously this show wants to sort of allude to that in a lot of ways. In that book, Luke wanted to go off and start his own order because it had already been 5 years, and he was like, I'm wasting time, and I don't have all the time in the world to do this. But he kept being brought in, being pulled back into the mission because the war wasn't over. And then, this resurgence of a new Grand Admiral, we thought we got them all. Which of course was Thrawn. He wanted to start the Jedi. He kept trying to leave, but he couldn't because he was so devoted to, making sure that the galaxy was at peace, because that takes priority right now over starting a Jedi Order. Also, Dark Winter, thank you for the super chat, £5. If it was good, people would be raising it. If it was good, people would be raising it. It is clearly not, so we're criticizing it. That's the difference.
I think he means praising, but yeah.
I'm not sure what he's referring to. Just the show as a whole, or
if it was good, we wouldn't be criticizing it, is what they're saying.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Well, no, I wouldn't even say that, right? Because I'll happily criticize Andor, and I think that's good.
Well, yeah, I will acknowledge that Andor has flaws and point them out, but yeah.
I guess
criticism.
They just mean in a general sense.
Well, maybe this just harks back to the beginning of the stream, right? When I was talking about my irritation with the way in which people have been criticizing and or defending the show, or just a lot of things recently, which is people seem to regard criticism as either an opportunity to make themselves feel big and relevant by shitting on somebody else, or as this unwarranted existential attack on their very sense of being, and it's neither, right? The point of criticism is not to belittle someone or to belittle anything. And it's not because you're a dick. It's because you want to make something improve. You want to improve the craft of something. You're trying to refine it. When we criticize a show like Ahsoka or Mandoverse or whatever, we're not just doing that because we're assholes with nothing better to do. We do that because we care about art and Star Wars. And we want to try and give our feedback. It's this is how you improve your product. This is how you make it better. This is what not to do in future. And why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, but the show is called Ahsoka. That is an argument I keep hearing for why Luke isn't brought in. It's that doesn't shut up. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I hate that.
Seething right now.
The film was called Solo. How dare they bring in Chewbacca?
Yeah, what even is that argument?
How dare they bring in Darth Maul? Oh, actually, that one's kind of valid.
It's like how we criticize. It's how I criticized the Kenobi show because Kenobi was the last person Bail should have called to go rescue Leia. Should have been, a bounty hunter or his own guards or whatever. Or if you need a Jedi, then Yoda or Ahsoka are more available. And it's but the show is called Obi-Wan. And it's but then it shouldn't be.
That's not an argument.
Sorry.
Please try again.
I'm so tired of meta defenses for in-universe criticisms. It's so stupid.
It's they don't know how to approach people like that. They don't know how to approach in-universe criticisms, or they don't know how to make them. Or in-universe defenses rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because there aren't any. That's the thing. It's I know that I'm right because you can't tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, so they have to rely on meta.
I'm just lamenting the general standard of argumentation that leads people to do that in the first place, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, I mean, let's just like do a food example, right? It's like, oh yeah, your cake recipe, you could, maybe a little bit more salt to bring out the flavor, and then someone's like, but it's called a strawberry cake. Why would I put in salt? I'm like, what?
Only be strawberry and cake, Jolly.
Yeah, those are the two ingredients: strawberry and the abstract concept of cake, cakeness.
For me, like cake mix, maybe, I don't know, like the bread.
Oh god,
just strawberry and baked bread, and that's it. That's your cake.
People need to be stopped. Sheev is what I'm saying. They just need to be stopped.
Oh, Sam Montgomery, thank you for the super chat. How dare you bring Hera and Sabine and Ahsoka? Exactly. The show's called Ahsoka, and yet, there's all these Rebels characters. What are they doing here?
What are all these other characters doing here?
Also,
isn't there only one character per show?
When Solace cameos show up and like when Luke Skywalker showed up in Mando, I didn't hear any of these people saying, but the show's called The Mandalorian.
I mean, to be fair, that was one of my criticisms of Mando season 3. Is like I thought this was about like Din. Why is this now Bo-Katan's story?
Well, that was my criticism of Book of Boba Fett, but not because that like other characters came in that weren't Boba Fett. It was because they devoted 2 episodes to a character who wasn't Boba Fett. He was barely in one of them, completely absent in the other, and it just essentially became The Mandalorian season 2.5 for 2 episodes. That's different than because Luke doesn't show up in Ahsoka because the show is called Ahsoka. Like, okay.
Well, yeah, because that's the point, right? Like when we're saying Luke should show up in Ahsoka, we're not saying therefore Ahsoka shouldn't be in her own show and it should be a Luke Skywalker show. We're saying we're not advocating for replacing our main character. We're just saying that she is the main character, but he is an important figure in this galaxy, and his absence is glaring in the story. He has to be addressed.
It could be reversed, right? Because like if this was a show called Luke Skywalker and they called him in instead, and we're like, but Ahsoka's around, right? And she'd want to get involved in this too, right? Where is she? People would just be like, but the show isn't called Ahsoka, it's called Luke Skywalker, and it's like, but their absence is glaring.
Oh yeah, I would be saying the same exact thing. I would be like, regardless of whether or not she should have lived this long, that's a whole nother discussion. But if it's set in stone that she is around during this timeline, I would be asking like, why is Ahsoka like not with Luke? I don't know.
Well, this is almost like the MCU early days when it was still sort of all right, and you'd have like these standalone movies after the first Avengers film, and the obvious like question was like, well, where are the rest of the Avengers during all this? Like when Thor: The Dark World happens and London's being smashed up by aliens, where the hell are the Avengers?
Yeah. Oh, but it's called Thor, so it can't. Iron Man can't show up. I just love how Civil War then came along and was like, yeah, but that's a stupid thing. Obviously, these are characters who exist in this world, regardless of who's the titular character. And Iron Man can be just as big of a character in this Captain America movie than anyone
it's a
else.
Captain America movie. What's Iron Man doing in Captain America: Civil War?
Well, shit, you're right.
Wait, Dan Rovis, what is Luke doing in Star Wars? I don't see Luke Skywalker in the title Star Wars.
That's true. Where is
Why are the stars not shooting at each other with laser guns?
Where is Monsieur Star Wars? I want him back as my main character. Anyway, back to the show. So
move on.
we have the meeting with Hera and Ahsoka, and Ahsoka is like, I found this map thing, and Hera's like, great. What does it do? What's the MacGuffin? And Ahsoka's like, well, it's a map to Grand Admiral Thrawn potentially. And Hera's like, wow, does that mean Ezra's alive? But she says it with all the lack of care as if she's asking about a cake recipe, which is really jarring.
And you're like, yeah.
She's like, oh, I guess that means Ezra could be all right. Cool. It's like, isn't he basically your son at this point, Hera? Like, I don't know, man.
She should
I feel like
be
you
really
should care.
excited at the idea, or at least like cautiously optimistic. Like she doesn't want to get her hopes up, but she's like, internally like can't help herself from being like, he might be alive. I might be able to see him again, see what he's doing.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then, so this isn't a problem, but it does require more explanation than I think the show gave it. Ahsoka's like, I can't open this. I don't know how to open this. And Hera's like, well, you know who might be able to help you? It's Sabine. So you should go and see Sabine. And okay, so on a practical level, are we really saying that of all the people in all the galaxy who are best equipped to open ancient treasure maps, that Sabine is just by coinkydink the best one? Because bullshit, I don't believe you. And if it's a character thing where that's not actually the case, right? But Hera is just trying to affect a reconciliation by being like, well, Sabine is quite artsy. Maybe she could help you, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I think that would be good for both of you. I need more from the show to reinforce that, because at the moment, the acting is so wooden and the dialogue so uninspired. I can't tell that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what they seem to clearly be going for is that Ahsoka is also kind of looking for an excuse to go see Sabine, because the show is introducing that these two characters, who in Rebels, I might remind you, had absolutely nothing to do with each other, had absolutely no relationship. They've introduced that off screen they have this entire relationship, like a master Padawan situation, and then Ahsoka basically abandoned her and her training to just go off and do her own thing. And so, they're pretty estranged, and it's kind of weird. But like, they still like each other, and they still want to, like, Ahsoka's still looking for a reason to go hang out with her, basically. And it's like, okay, you've introduced all of this. It hasn't been fleshed out yet. It could be.
Oh my god!
But it hasn't.
I need to address this in chat. So people need to listen to the words I'm saying before I start getting annoyed. So Malik, yes, Sabine was a technical savant in Rebels. This is true. Being technically gifted, being one of a number of people in this galaxy who are technically gifted, does not make you the best person to turn to on a practical level when I need to decipher an ancient puzzle left by Dathomirian Night Sisters who employed magic in their designs in order to find a Grand Admiral.
You mean there are people like museum curators and other like historians and artifact, like archaeologists. Fuck, that's the word I was looking for. People like that who would be probably a lot better at figuring out what this is and how to unlock it than someone like Sabine, who's just like good with machines at some kind. Sometimes,
I know he's dead at this point, but like someone like Luthen Rail, who's like, as someone who deals in antiquities, might be the person to talk to.
Yeah, well, and we
don't know that he's dead by this point, but knowing Tony Gilroy, he's dead by this point.
Well, and one thing that this show got right, I mean, there's going to be other criticisms to levy against that particular scene, but later on when they bring the droid head to Sabine, it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. She would be the one who could probably hack into this thing, I suppose.
And she's on planets.
Yeah. So, but not so much the map. I don't know.
Yeah, the map it's very clearly like Sabine can do it. She's not the only one who can do it, and therefore it's being used as an excuse for them to reconcile.
Well,
because
again,
both of them kind of want that.
We're gonna get to this scene later, but like the way Sabine figures it out is so quick. It feels like Tony figuring out time travel in Endgame, just like in a few minutes, basically, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's happening now.
I just can't help but find it funny. I thought this during Rebels as well, that Sabine's like childish looking drawings are considered like art, like masterful art that needs to be deciphered. Like Thrawn kind of treated it that way as well. Like he was like examining one of her art in Rebels. It's like, yeah, this shitty art that was made by a child is going to tell me a lot about the people.
I'm going to push back on this point in two ways. So the first is that I really dislike it when people point to what they consider to be like quote unquote bad art, because just of a particular style, right? But they're like, I do not like the style is bad, whether that's graffiti or cartoon or caricature or whatever. Therefore there's no meaning to be drawn out of it. Like, she could be a very gifted artist with a very simplistic style. That's very possible. But that aside, which is what the show's arguing that she is. But also that aside, in terms of like deciphering her art as though it's like grand art, that's not what Thrawn uses art for, right? He uses art to get a psychological read on his opponents. Yeah, and like I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, after you.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah. I was being kind of mean there. I mean, that's true. It's just, I guess, I mean, the framing and the reasoning that Ahsoka and Hera have is, well, Sabine's an artist, therefore let's take this to her. So I think it's just like, that's kind of the point that I was making there,
Yeah, and that just comes back to what I was saying, right? Of like, if the intent is to genuinely argue that Sabine is like the only person who can do this, then fuck off, I don't believe you. And if the actual intent of the scene is to be like, well, no, we all know that she's not, but they're just using her, she's being raised as a person who can help because Hera wants to reconcile them, and because Ahsoka kind of wants an excuse to see her again anyway. Then I need more work done from the show to reinforce that, because right now there's not really much to work with.
Okay, so I've ignored a super chat from She Talks 8. Someone If I make a joke, no, fuck. If I make the jokes here you told me not to do in Discord, does your channel get taken down? Asking for a friend. You should meet him sometime. He's a painter. Har har. Funny Nazi joke. Thank you. Thank you
I was
for
going to
your
say
money.
maybe we shouldn't have addressed that one. But
I addressed it because I address every super chat. But like, come on, man. You know,
yeah,
you're better than this. I think.
But yeah, I'm just pushing back on the idea that because Sabine does simplistic quote unquote art styles, that makes her a bad artist or like lacking in artistic nuance. That's just not how art works.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we are very slowly going through this episode.
Right. So let's hash it through. Right. So the next scene is what, Morgan Elspeth at the crater site.
Yes.
And the important thing is we've already talked a little bit about the scene. So I guess the important thing here is like this is the first confirmation that we get that Morgan is a Night Sister, right? She's like, oh, I'm a Night Sister of Dathomir, and Shin's like, you're a witch. And I was like, wait a second, you are not a Dathomirian lady. And this comes now into questions of like, do we believe? Because I certainly don't, based on what we've seen of them. But do we believe that the Dathomirian Night Sisters would ever adopt an outsider and teach them their secrets? Because I do not believe this for a second.
No. One thing I will say is that I know she was referring to her ancestors in that the temple itself was built by her ancestors, because obviously they would have been. But I did also maybe interpret that line to possibly mean her ancestors were Night Sisters, and that she's part of the same species, but like a half-breed or something, like some human intermingling.
Or it's either that, or she just meant like her ancestors from like a legacy standpoint, where like I guess even if she is not like Dathomiri or whatever, assuming she's a Night Sister, they still consider her like one of them, and she considers them her sisters.
Well, then
like if she's not Dathomiri, then it doesn't seem like something the Night Sisters would do to adopt her. And also, so I have a lot of criticisms about Night Sisters as a concept that I'm going over in my Clone Wars video. But the best faith inference that I gave the show was that it was implying only people that were the same species as the Night Sisters could use their magics effectively, which this show is seeming to contradict. So I don't know how much I like that.
On top of which, I mean, this is like a dual-fold problem, right? Because like either she's if she's an adopted Night Sister, then I don't understand why a culture that is very reticent to share secrets with anybody outside of themselves, and like even the males of their own species, would ever adopt a non-Dathomirian and raise them in their ways. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But that aside, if this temple was built by my ancestors line doesn't refer to the Dathomirians, if she's referring to our actual ancestors, then holy contrivance, Batman, of all the people who could have been trained as a Night Sister, who also were followers of Thrawn, and therefore able to magically access his location, it just so happened to be the descendant of the people who have extragalactic travel maps? Fuck my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think she was saying that the Night Sisters are her ancestors. Like, she is a Night Sister, and she even has their magics and everything.
Yeah, I mean, she explicitly describes it. And when she's activating the map later, she is like using some form of magic, is she not?
Yeah,
unless that's just a result.
What we're saying is she is No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, unless that was
ahead.
just a result of her like placing the map on that pedestal or something.
Well, because Balin
she's
did
doing
that
like
and
weird.
do that.
Yeah, she's doing like weird shit with her hands too, like the Night Sisters do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that also raises the question of if we want to bring in the Mandoverse, why didn't she use any magic against Ahsoka? I guess the idea is that they wanted to have a fair fight with only melee weapons. I don't know.
I guess.
Oh well, yeah. If anyone subscribes to the idea of a fair fight, it's the Night Sisters.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
Which again, it's like if we're not factoring in the Mandoverse, then technically these two shows aren't part of the same like head continuity that we're going for here. So, but that's why it's so messy, and that's why we're trying really hard to like differentiate the two. Like, yes, in the Mandoverse, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. Just by itself, we don't know the specific details of how Ahsoka captured her, so that's fine.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I want to add as well. About Night Sisters not taking in outsiders. I feel like you could have some sort of backstory where, like, I don't know, maybe her family like crash landed on Dathomir and she was the only survivor, and she was like a very well, I know, but let's just say that there was some way that she survived. I don't know, and they like find her, and she's at a young enough age that they could basically just like mold her into whatever they want to.
No, I'm with Sheev
Like-
on this. They would just
They
kill her.
just killed her. Probably eaten
Really?
her too, because like that seems like something they would do.
I guess so.
Also, Joe said, "Aren't there multiple clans?" Now that's like an EU thing. I don't think that the Clone Wars and Rebels ever established that there were multiple clans of.
Yeah, that's
Night
not
Sisters.
that's not something we have in the canon as it is in either the Filoniverse continuity or a wider continuity for Disney.
Well, did Fallen Order establish that with like Merrin?
No,
that
No,
Merrin looks exactly like all the other Night Sisters except she's got white hair, but like that's just a hair color. Like in terms of like species look, she looks exactly the same as the rest of them.
yeah, and it's very clear, like just based on talking to her and stuff, it's very clear that she's from the Mother Talzin's clan. So
Yeah, she references Grievous.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Merrin. Yeah. Well, and again, like in the EU, there were different clans, but also the Night Sisters were very different. They were just one clan of like the larger witches of Dathomir. There were a bunch of different clans that were different things, and the Night Sisters were sort of seen as like mavericks that were way too evil and dark-sidey.
Yeah, as the Ghost Legend just said, the Night Brothers have different clans, but the Night Sisters apparently don't.
Yeah. Which the thing about the whole like the EU retcons that the Clone Wars did is the reason that it's so messy within just the show itself is that like you've taken these things from the EU that have nothing to do with each other and just thrown them all into a melting pot. Darth Maul's species are from Iridonia. Like Ventress was originally not the same species as him, and she was born on Rat-a-Tack. The Night Sisters were their own thing. Dathomir was its own thing that wasn't red. I don't know where the fuck they got that from. And they just threw it all together and acted like they're all part of the same thing. And that's why it's so weird. And now everyone just like doesn't seem to really know what they are really. They think they do, but then they try to like break down what they do
also,
understand. And it's like
just to address Jimbo Jamba's point there of like, or maybe she is meant to be a Night Sister and they were just lazy. They took the time to. I mean, they took the time to paint Hera and like Ahsoka and people. So also like this, you realize this is you realize this is a criticism either way, right? Because like either they did intend that and then they're really bad at their jobs, or they're not that bad at their jobs, but they didn't intend that. And either way, it's a problem.
No, I don't think that that's true because because the problem is like she already existed in The Mandalorian, so they would have had to have forgotten to have done that as well.
Well done, Jimbo Jambo. You've broken Sheev.
That's it. I don't give a shit anymore. Fuck this shit.
Well, no, I mean...
Just the makeup artist, like the thing is, like because the makeup artist had to do Ahsoka first, and then she painted Hera like full body, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, we've got like a third person for you to do," and she's like, "Fuck this! I want to be out of here by 6 o'clock. No, I'm off. I'm off. Bye."
Well, I mean, we laugh, but here's the thing: like, I actually think that they're kind of onto something. Like, I think that my theory about this is that Dave Filoni retroactively, like after The Mandalorian, decided that she was a Night Sister. But unfortunately, that episode of The Mandalorian had already happened, and they had to stay consistent with that. So they just gave her the same appearance, but now they're just like, she's a Night Sister, yeah, because you all love Night Sisters, right? You love the Clone Wars.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is what happened.
Didn't Critical Drinker like fuck? What am I looking for? What's the
criticize?
Criticize? Yeah. Why could I not think of that word? Didn't Critical Drinker criticize the concept of Night Sisters as though they were an Ahsoka invented thing? Just he didn't.
Yes.
He hasn't seen.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, in his review video, he claimed he's like, since when is witchcraft a thing in Star Wars? But then other times throughout the video,
1994.
Yeah,
actually earlier than that because the Ewok movies.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, and then like at other points in the video, he claims to like know things about Hera and Sabine and all these characters from like Rebels and the Clone Wars, but then he didn't know that. It's like, yeah, I don't believe you, Drinker. I don't think you actually watch those shows.
Anyway, we do need to like proceed apace. So let's get a wiggle on.
Yeah. Sure.
So the only last thing to say about this scene is like there's some very odd connecting tissue now between this and the rest of the story, which is like Morgan is like, okay, send Shin off to Lothal, and then leaves. And Shin's like, what the fuck? And then Phelan's like, well, so Sabine Wren is on Lothal, and she's Ahsoka's former apprentice. And I'm like, okay, there's two things about this that really annoy me. The first is apparently Sabine's apprenticeship with Ahsoka is common knowledge. I don't know why it would be.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know.
Apparently that's the case. And then the other thing here, which is just odd, is like, for the reasons I outlined earlier, if you think Ahsoka has the map, why on earth of all places would you think she'd bring it to Sabine? Like, so either you've read at this point, either you've read the script, or we're going off like some kind of nice system, like she had a vision thing, which is so lazy.
This is part of a larger like complaint that I have with this. So I'm assuming she sent Shin there because she wanted, like, she expected that maybe Ahsoka might bring the map to Sabine for whatever reason. But if that's the case, then the whole purpose of sending Shin there is if Ahsoka shows up, someone will be there to like attack them and take map. The problem with that is that they've sent one person, and like assuming that Morgan is correct and Ahsoka does go there, this is gonna Shin is gonna have to essentially go up against both Sabine and Ahsoka. I don't think she could take Ahsoka in a 1v1, but both of them together, she would have been fucked. If the only reason she wasn't, as we're gonna get into, is like some major contrivances.
I suppose the question is like, what exactly is Shin's mission? In fact, it's like this is like brought up as well when we get to the lightsaber stab. Of like, there's a real possibility that Shin is getting slightly different orders from Baylan than Morgan wants her to. Like, Baylan's motives and Morgan's don't exactly align, or might not exactly align. But I think what's more likely is that Shin has been sent here on like essentially like, you are going to spy from a distance, and if Sabine has the map, you are going to create an opportunity to steal it and then get the fuck out of Dodge. You are not expected to engage Ahsoka.
Okay, yes, but like, again, and we're going to get into this, there would be no logical reason why Sabine would ever be by herself with the map and like without Ahsoka there.
Yeah, well, I guess that's
what ends up happening, but like,
I guess that's why she has the assassin droids with her as well, so that they can distract whoever she's having to like steal the thing from long enough for her to get the thing and get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, maybe.
Either way, it's risky as fuck. But again, that comes down to how much does Baylan trust the Shin's competence. Like, Shin might be very, very competent.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, even if you just sent Merrick, like, I don't know, she just stands a much better chance.
Yeah, I mean, send her with Merrick, definitely.
Going against both of them, yeah. Like, don't send her by herself unless the only instruction she was given was to just lay in wait and see and maybe report back.
Well, I'm really confused about something, and maybe I missed something while watching. What I'm confused about is, why did the second droid like end up sticking around? If
we'll get that. We've got thoughts on that.
Yeah, because like, why would the droid not just have gone with Shin? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to that because we have a potential defense for that, but then that also comes with its own set of criticisms. So
yeah. Anyway, so that happens, and then we have the memorial wall is being unveiled to Lothal, and Clancy's back, which is nice to see. And Sabine has basically like buggered off from the ceremony. And just to get this very quickly out of the way, I've seen some people be like, "Oh, that's out of character. Why would she not be there to honor Ezra?" And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's in character for Sabine to not want to confront emotionally painful things and just to fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I'm fine with that. I did immediately criticize that, but that only because I didn't know where they were going with it.
Yeah.
I think they handled it fine.
But also the music, Sheev, the music doesn't fit Star Wars.
It's bad because rock, guys. Which, I mean, at least be consistent, because we've had rock music in Star Wars before.
Yeah, we definitely have.
Like in Dave Filoni projects, we had one. We had Zeb listening to rock music in an episode of Rebels, but we also had like a sequence which I feel was actually out of place, where like in the Clone Wars, one of the early seasons, the clones were like gearing up to go out into battle, and just this like really weird rock music was playing. And there it did feel out of place, but not here. It's fine.
The point is, like, when people make that, like, oh, this music doesn't fit, like, this is not what I think of, like, this is not the tone of Star Wars. Like, it just reminds me of that really bad criticism of Andor. It was like, oh, I saw bricks and screws. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, even
if I were trying to be best faith to Andor deniers, to like say it doesn't feel like Star Wars, it's like, but what does that mean beyond just the existence of bricks and screws? Like, I'm sure they have other reasons for feeling that way.
Well, the reason I think I'm fine with it is that it doesn't feel like a soundtrack for the show itself. It just feels like something that a character in the universe is listening to, which is usually how it's framed.
Is listening to it, and that seems like something she would listen to. I don't know.
Yeah. She's as close to a punk as we have gotten in this universe so far. This feels like the kind of thing she'd listen to.
This kind of feels like when people criticize the Bear and the Maiden Fair in Game of Thrones, because they were like, that doesn't seem like a Game of Thrones songs, and I was like, I don't know, it seems like something that would like conceivably have been written and sung in universe, and it also just contrasts hilariously with like the scene where Jaime gets his hand cut off and he's screaming in pain, and then it just cuts to that really upbeat music.
So Force Lord, I have had terrible news for you about punk, which is that punk is an offshoot of rock. But
yeah.
Oh my god.
Punk music is called punk rock. Like punk is punk is a wider political and artistic movement, but in music it started off as an offshoot of rock.
Like it wasn't metal, it was Metallica.
There's something I want to touch on here before we like move ahead about like Lothal itself at this point in time.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
One thing that I've found kind of weird, and I don't know how you guys feel about this. I don't really understand why Lothal is now this like booming metropolis.
Yes,
and I understand that that's what happened in Rebels, but like it was like a backwater farming planet even before the Empire increased their presence there. Why would it suddenly be like this big booming city after they got kicked out? I don't understand.
Well, it's also just a
Did
general
they open
question.
themselves up to like trading opportunities after the Empire fell? But even then, that would have only been 5 years ago. So like,
no, because Werner Herzog told us that the Empire has better trading opportunities. Remember, that was his pitch.
Right, of course.
But also, like, this is just a wider thing about Star Wars building times in general, right? Which is that like they are wildly inconsistent because Navarro built like an entire republic essentially overnight. Lothal built a super metropolis within like a couple of years, apparently whilst the Civil War was going on. Which, like, okay,
yes.
I had this exact problem with like the state of Lothal in the epilogue of Rebels. I was like, how much time? We didn't know how much time had passed. It could have been right after Return of the Jedi, or it could have been several years later. And now we know exactly how much time it's been. 10 years to the day. And it's like, wow, that was really fast.
Well, and let's not forget that the Empire stripped a lot of Lothal's resources in order to like build Thrawn's TIE Defender program. So that would have fucked up their economy even more.
Yep, you think.
It's only been 10 years. I don't know why suddenly they're like, this like thriving metropolis.
Here's the thing, right? Like, I'm prepared to believe in this kind of very far into the future, super technological era, that building times are rapid. That you could, if you put your mind to it, build a city in like a couple of years. Like, I'm fully prepared to believe that of this universe. However, what I'm not prepared to believe is that Lothal has the economy to do that.
No, not at all. And honestly, it just reeks of like a very simplistic, like childish view of like, everything was bad when the Empire was there, but then everything's good when they're gone. It's like, I don't think that's how that works.
It's like how in Return of the Jedi, like the Death Star is destroyed and the Emperor's dead, and then we just cut to all these different planets like celebrating in unison and like tearing down statues, and it's like, I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time for the regime to shift. It's not just immediately like, oh, well, everything's fine now.
Yeah, like the end of Return of the Jedi is not the end of the war. It's just like now the war is on an even footing. Before now, it was the rebellion was always on the run and the Empire was winning. Yeah. Now it's the Empire is in complete disarray. They can't maintain order anymore, and the rebels now have a surge of support everywhere.
Which is why when people criticize the Mandoverse and they're like, I thought the Empire was defeated, it's like, no.
Simplistic. Yeah.
Yeah, like, are you a child? It's not like Lord of the Rings where like throwing the ring into Mount Doom will like kill Sauron or whatever and destroy evil forever and everything will be great. It's not like that. It's it's a regime change. You're toppling an empire. You cut off the head of the snake, but the snake's body is still writhing around. You still got to get rid of that.
Yeah, it would have taken, I mean, this is what the original EU was, right? Like it took like a solid decade.
Like 15 something years before they even came to like an accordance, basically. And that even then, the Imperial Remnant still had their own little swath of the galaxy that they had dominion over.
There was still like a rump imperial state because the New Republic was not the size of the old Galactic Republic.
Because realistically, that's how it would happen. It wouldn't just be overnight, like, oh, we're all free. It's great.
Well, and happy. Like, if anything,
we are free.
If anything, Lothal would just go back to where it was before. It would just go back to like a stable state. Like insofar as like a farming planet can go back to that, it would become a metropolis.
It's space Oklahoma. That's what Lothal is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I live in Oklahoma,
Kansas,
so I can tell you guys that it's I'm in Lethal right now as we speak.
Oh, can you destroy that god awful wall that's being put up? It's really ugly. I just
I like it. I find it tasteful, Jollert.
It doesn't fit the village's rustic aesthetic.
But yeah, so it's a little weird, but whatever. We're moving on. And so then Azadi is like, hey, where's Sabine? What the fuck? Go after her. And he's like sends two officers, pilots, I guess, to go find her.
From the Lethal Defense Fleet. So Lethal, I want everyone to remember this. Lethal has defensive planes.
Yep.
Just something to note.
Yeah. But then she doesn't want to go, and so like, oh, we have orders, we have to arrest you. So one of them like parks in the middle of the road, assuming that'll force her to stop, and then she just essentially engages in a game of chicken, and they realize she's not stopping, and then she like presses a little button that causes her bike to lower, and she like skids under it, and it's super cool and badass, and then she moves on, and they kind of nod respectfully toward her, and then they just leave. But it's like, you know where they're going. You've been given orders to bring her back. So, like, you could still go after her, surely.
Oh, sure. I guess I'm prepared to forgive this, right? I think what's happened there is, like, she's made it manifestly clear she's not going peacefully. And he's like, well, I could chase her down, but, like, frankly, I don't want the hassle. I'd rather just go back and report. I'd rather just go back and report that she's not coming.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm fine with that. It's just, yeah, the scene's fine. The music is fine. I'm tired of this whole it's out of place for Star Wars. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, qualify that or shut up.
She goes back and feeds the Lothcat, and like, you know what? I'm going to go on a limb here. I think I'm in the minority, but I, for the most part, prefer the practical effect to the full CGI abomination we had in Mando. It's not always perfect. It's robotic in places, but I actually prefer the look of it than I do to the original CGI one.
I'll admit it grew on me, but I still think that the CGI one just looked better.
All right, that's fair enough. That's not a criticism from either of us. That's just a difference of opinion, but it's worth pointing out. Yeah. We have a very painfully long scene where she like goes around and puts into camera view lots of little bits of memorabilia for Rebels fans to
come over.
Yeah, that's a bit annoying. And then she goes outside, and we get the scene from Rebels where Ahsoka's ship is flying in.
Mm-hmm. Is that supposed to be the scene from Rebels? Because in Rebels, Sabine had like her haircut by that point. I assume the epilogue was from the end of episode 2 of this show.
Maybe. I don't know. Whatever. Like the thing of the show does not keep continuity in terms of how people work.
Yeah, they do change details from the epilogue, and it's a little annoying, but whatever.
Yeah, Ahsoka the White becomes Ahsoka the Grey instead.
It's just a nitpick. I see, because I remember being like, she's not wearing the white robe. Or carrying around the staff, and I know we're building up to that scene. So, like, is she just going to randomly change, or are we just disregarding that for some reason? And it was the latter.
There's like a cut scene where like Ahsoka's on her ship, and it's like, should I dress to impress? And she gets into the white robe, like with a staff and the turtleneck, and she's like, nah, maybe it's a bit much. And like, just puts it away again.
But yeah.
What's the next scene after that? It's like, so Ahsoka goes to talk to, like, she turns up at the memorial wall, and Sabine comes in, and they have a little chat where they kind of stare awkwardly at each other for a little while, and then they go off to Ahsoka's ship, and they talk about how they could be potentially getting Ezra back, which again, like Hera, Sabine doesn't seem that enthusiastic about, which is weird.
Yeah. Oh, we skipped over one thing. This is just something I want to take note of. When Sabine is watching Ezra's message, "You're like a sister to me."
Yeah.
If they do something in the show where like they get together, I'm just gonna like be replaying that clip over and over again.
Well,
Sweet home Alabama.
If we know anything from Empire Strikes Back, is that this franchise is not averse to a little bit of brother-sister coupling. Yeah, I think like that line is very clearly thrown in to shut up people who are shipping them, and I'm like, why can't you just leave it ambiguous?
I think it's fine if they're platonic friends, or maybe they have like a siblingly relationship, which of course they would because of their dynamic during the years they spent on the Ghost together. Like, that's fine. You just don't really need to be explicit about it. Like, let people have their headcanons.
Yeah, I don't care one way or the other, honestly.
because this comes down to I don't understand what the point of shutting down one side is versus the other, right? Like this is almost like I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter earlier today. I was addressing this with like people because someone was like, "Oh, Finn being kissed by Rose was straight washing," and I was like, "What the fuck?"
I saw that. Which is it's the
like,
same
okay.
thing with Bo-Katan being lesbian,
Yeah.
quote unquote, with Mando season 3, where it's
Well,
like
like,
it is fine if you want a headcanon that Finn and Poe are like gay or whatever, and that like maybe they'll get together, but that is not in the text. So if they make either one of them straight, you just have to live with it, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, they haven't ruined your character. That's a characterization you've put on them, not from the text.
They've ruined your headcanon of a character, which is not the same thing.
Yeah, there's also a second element to that, which I find really annoying. We brought up with the Bo-Katan stuff as well, which is like, let's just say that Finn and had shown like gay interest in Poe, and let's say Bo-Katan had shown
exist.
Yeah, bi people exist. So if you see like a character who so far has only like shown interest towards their own sex, showing interest towards a different sex, and you cry straight washing, I'm going to call you I'm going to call you a biphobe because that's what you are.
That's what I was talking about this exact thing with my brother last night. And as a bisexual person myself, bisexual representation is important just as much as gay or lesbian or whatever.
We don't exist in comics, Sheev. We don't exist.
I remember, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show The 100, but basically the main character on that show is a woman who is bisexual. She's been with both men and women on the show. And there was this character who's a male that she's been shipped with like throughout the whole series. They never ended up getting together. Which I feel was wasted because they had a lot of great chemistry and the actors are married in real life. So whatever. But she's bisexual. So like, it'd be totally fine if they did get together, but the fans just wouldn't have it. And I think that's the reason the writers cowered out of ever putting them together. The fans wouldn't have it. She'd been with a woman. So if she ever had another partner, it had to be a woman. And I was like, well, hang on. What's the point in even establishing that she's bi if she's only allowed to be with someone of the opposite sex? Like that's bi erasure.
Yeah, there is a contingent of people who feel that bi characters have to be shown being in a relationship with someone of the same sex only, Otherwise it's like they might as well be straight. Like that's kind of a mentality that some people have.
That's so disgusting.
Yeah, that's grim. That's really grim. Anyway, moving on, because we do need to get on with this. So, what's the next thing? Oh, they talk about the map, right? Where Ahsoka's like, "Oh, we need you to do this map thing for us," and Sabine's like, "Well, you never made it easy for me," and Ahsoka's like, "Well, being a Jedi isn't easy." And I was like, okay, I guess now's the time to address this, right? We get a line in the second episode from Hoyang that confirms that Sabine is not Force sensitive, or at the very least,
or if she is, it's barely.
Yeah, it's in the same kind of way that Chirrut was from Rogue One, where it's like barely there at all. In fact, I would argue that Chirrut's a lot stronger than Sabine's.
Well, yeah, Chirrut was at least able to sense Jyn like from across a crowded streetway, even though he's blind, and like he knew that she had a kyber crystal on her. Like as a necklace, like he has some sensitivity there. We've never seen any kind of display from Sabine that would hint that, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like, there's a problem with this either way, which is that if she has Force sensitivity, then in the Mandoverse continuity things are fucked because we've had the whole thing about her and Grogu and not wanting to train Grogu because the potential to make a new Vader or something. So that would be buggered. And then if it's not Mandoverse and it's just regular continuity and Sabine is Force sensitive, then how the hell has this never been noticed before?
There is actually something they could do with that. Like we're going to get into this more about like Ahsoka's characterization and what her actual fears are and what they stem from. But like essentially this seems to be hinting at she's afraid of taking on another student because she's afraid of failing another person and them ending up in the same way that like Anakin ended up. Maybe the reason she refused Grogu is because when she was training Sabine, she saw something in her that reminded her a lot of Anakin, and she was not prepared for that, and that just caused that freaked her out, and it caused her to like just basically leave her.
Yeah, maybe, but then we need some actual
they need to
work to establish that.
They need to establish that, yeah. But I would consider that consistent with the whole Mando thing, at least so far, and with her eventually deciding to come train her at the end of episode 2.
Yeah, it just definitely requires some backtracking on their part. They got to go back and like explore.
They got to do a lot of legwork to fill in the gaps between Rebels and this show. Is basically not only do they have to explain where she was during the OT, but we also have to like establish any kind of relationship between her and Sabine that just did not exist in that show.
Yeah, and the other side of this coin, because this is the other bit that needs to be addressed, that if she's not force sensitive, right? If that's not an issue at all, and if Sabine just doesn't have the force,
then
why train her as a Jedi at all? I don't get this, right? And why would Sabine want that?
She's already a competent fighter, right? Maybe she wanted some more sword lessons, like she got some when she was, learning to wield the darksaber. Like, and sure, maybe Ahsoka could teach her more about like how to swing a lightsaber. That's fine, but that's a lot different than actual Jedi training and like calling her your Padawan and everything like that.
And I guess the idea is like maybe she's not, like, assuming she's not force sensitive, or at least force sensitive on the same level that Jedi are. Maybe she's not prone to like the dark side or shit like that. I don't know. I have no idea.
There's levels to this, right? Because like with the darksaber, the reason like why Sabine was getting lightsaber training is because she wielded the darksaber at that point, and therefore it was considered necessary. However, there is a reason why non-force sensitive people do not tend to wield lightsabers, and it's because you will get your fucking shit wrecked up by someone who has been trained with a lightsaber who has the force, because they're prescient. Like, this is something that's addressed with like Anakin, right? Like, he's good at pod racing because he can see flashes of the future before they happen, and Qui-Gon calls this a Jedi trait. The reason lightsaber fighting is acrobatic and so over the top in some ways is because they're constantly adjusting their position for possible future positions that they've just anticipated. Sabine should stand absolutely no chance, unarmored and with a lightsaber, against anyone who's even been vaguely trained in the Force who's wielding a lightsaber.
Yeah, credit where it's due. She does have a lightsaber duel with Shin in this episode, and does not
Shin
win.
Wins, yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, that's good.
It's great that she doesn't win. I mean, the duel itself is whatever.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But also, something that's worth bringing up: this show is basically just treating it like Ahsoka is a Jedi. Like, we're just saying that she is, and she like had a Padawan and everything, and like Huyang's with her and not with Luke, who's actually trying to rebuild the Jedi Order. And it's like, because last we saw her, she very like prominently was like, I am not a Jedi. She said that to Vader. And that was the last we saw of her before, the Mandoverse and stuff. So if we're developing that she hasn't come to terms with that she is a Jedi, at least in spirit, if not in name, then like we need to see that development. From what it's like so far, that's all been off screen.
Yeah, it's what we talked about earlier. It's just continually frustrating that they're still avoiding that. Like, they're still avoiding like all that development since Malachor. Like, we need answers to these things because it's like a fundamental shift in character.
And again, it's like
even simple things
they
like
just haven't
why is Huyang here and not with Luke is a big question, given that Luke is now the head of the Jedi Order. But
he's the only Jedi. He's the only actual person who calls himself a Jedi that exists in the entire galaxy.
Maybe that's why Luke isn't here. Is like he tried to get Huyang, and Huyang was like, "No, I don't recognize you as a Jedi. Only Ahsoka." And so Luke just went
met
off
Ahsoka. I at least have seen her in action, which is fair. At least that's fair. He has a somewhat of a relationship with Ahsoka, like from the Clone Wars. Not much of one. They spent one arc together.
I'm just picturing a scene now where like Ahsoka shows up to meet with Luke, and she's got Huyang with her, and Luke is like, "Oh wow, he's got all this knowledge. Can I borrow him?" And Ahsoka's just like, "No."
That's the thing. It's like Luke would have so many questions for Huyang, like to help him really establish the Order. Like Huyang is a wealth of knowledge, and we're trying to rebuild the Jedi. We don't have that much information to go on. Like we have some text that like Yoda and Obi-Wan whatever left behind, or that they were able to steal away from the temple, maybe. But like, come on.
This is going to come into this play again when we talk about the hospital room scene and what's at stake in that scene. Because it's not nearly as bad as a lot of people seem to think it is, but it is still quite bad.
Yeah, well, I don't know what Odrin thinks about that scene. I just remember I misinterpreted it originally when I watched it, because we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. Anyway, so yeah, the end of the result of this conversation is that Ahsoka and Sabine are still kind of sniping at each other. They're not quite on good terms. Sabine's understandably quite annoyed at Ahsoka for walking out on her. And Ahsoka's like, yeah, you can't take the map off this ship. The map has to stay here. It's too important to be left unattended.
Sabine asks for it because she wants to study it in a place that's quieter that she can think in. And Ahsoka's like, that's not a good idea because this thing is like potentially going to start another war if it falls into the wrong hands. So it stays with me.
At which point, Yeah, at which point Sabine then fucks off with the map. And see, I believe Sabine would do that. What I do not believe
Sure.
is Ahsoka would let her do that. Because that's what happens. Ahsoka just, like, rather than going immediately after her to recover it and being really annoyed, which would have been actually a very interesting scene that might actually have given Ahsoka some pretense as to why she would have stopped training Sabine.
You're too impulsive. You never listen. This, and this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
she has to for some reason go into the other room to talk with Yin Yang rather than just like calling him into her room.
Well, because he was doing like an analysis on the lightsabers of the attackers, and he found out, like, that's how they find out who Balin is.
But was he
has a record?
Well, but was he doing that analysis like on something that he was holding, or was it something on the ship? I can't remember.
On the ship, I think.
Oh,
yeah, it's on the ship.
They like took a copy of the recording and were like scanning it. I don't know.
Which, by the way, proves that they could have just sent the recording to Ahsoka.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But yeah, so actually, I like that scene a lot. So just to quickly discuss it, yeah, like Hoya pulls up a Balon's lightsaber.
Well, hang on before you do that, just to round out the criticisms of her letting Sabine go off with it. Like I was saying, if the plan was to send Shin there so that she could potentially get a hold of the map if Ahsoka decides to show up on Lothal, it is heavily contrived that the only reason Shin was able to get Sabine alone with the map, and therefore be able to take it easily enough, is that Sabine ran off with it, and even though Ahsoka explicitly told her not to because of what's at stake, she just allowed that to happen anyway.
But she needs a place to think.
Well, it's fine for Sabine, but it's facilitated. The plot development is then facilitated by Ahsoka behaving out of character by not going immediately after Sabine and retrieving the map. Instead, she phones up Hera to have a little whine, which is
she doesn't listen. It's like, come on, go. Like, she's like not even that far away. You can get there in like 5 minutes.
I like the idea that she phones up Hera and Hera's like on the sofa with a glass of wine and be like, oh, girlfriend, tell me about it. Like, she just will not listen. Am I right?
I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. You guys keep going.
Yeah. No, one thing I want to say about that scene as well, the scene between Ahsoka and Sabine. I just found it like people talk about how stiff and stilted a lot of the dialogue is in this show. That scene, I think, is where that really was apparent to me, at least. I don't know. There was just something about the way that they were talking to each other where it felt like artificial, like manufactured drama for the sake of it. Like, we don't have any context or like substance behind any of this, and it's just like you were hard on me, master, and it's like I don't know, just all these lines that they're quipping back and forth at each other. I'm just like, I don't have context for any of this, and like, you're not really giving me any detail.
There's a really big issue with Ahsoka in this as a character in the show, which has not yet been addressed. Which maybe we'll talk about more at the end. But like, this is a general criticism of Disney canon as well. Of like, the shadow of Vader and Vader's effect psychologically on people who knew him should be way more pronounced than what we see. Like, I can't stress how fucking like integral to Ahsoka's current characterization the specter of Vader should be.
Yeah.
He was possibly the most consequential, or certainly the most consequential figure in her life by a very long way, but arguably the most consequential figure in galactic history. It's very weird that he's not really mentioned and that there's no effect of his life, apparently.
And it seems like, as far as this show is concerned, just based on these 2 episodes that we've seen, the only impact that Anakin / Vader has really had on Ahsoka is more the fact that like she left him. She didn't finish training, and that's being juxtaposed with the same thing happening with Sabine. But like the whole Vader thing, his transformation into Vader, like none of that really is shining through.
Right, because I mean, Sheev and I spoke about this earlier, but we also, I think Sheev mentioned it in this stream a little bit earlier, or at least referenced it, where it was like Ahsoka's real motivations in terms of like what's going on with Sabine isn't that she's afraid of like training a new monster, right? What she's actually afraid of is failing someone. Because like in her own mind, Anakin's descent into Vader is at least partially her fault, and she's never really come to terms with that. That idea that she blames herself. I mean, like, that thing is like, that is something she should be blaming. Well, should in inverted commas, but as a character should be blaming herself for. That would be it's very in character for her to do.
Yeah.
Like the idea of watching the person you love most in the whole world, someone who's like scarcely older than you, who's been your older brother and your mentor and your best friend, be twisted into like the most ruthless, vile, mass murdering lunatic Sith Lord of all time, a burnt monster in a ruined man in a fucking culty death suit. The literal stuff of nightmares, like that should have way more of an effect. Like I want to see things like Ahsoka, waking up in cold sweats and like feeling constantly like the shadow of Vader is looming over her shoulder and like just trauma everywhere. Basically, like I want to see the effects of this little thing. Like actually, there's a really nice moment in Rogue One that kind of does this, where like when Bodhi, the pilot, is first brought to what's it called, Saw Gerrera, and obviously by this point Saw Gerrera has to use a rebreather because he's so badly hurt. When he first pulls it off his belt, it makes the same breathing noise that Vader's breathing makes, and for a brief second, Bodhi's face is just complete terror. Like little moments like that, right? Where like I don't know, maybe a door on her ship opens in a way that kind of sounds like Vader's breathing, and Ahsoka just has like a panic attack, or like something like that.
Something like that. I mean, we got little bits of that in Rebels where, there's a scene where she hears Anakin's voice. It's like, do you know what I've become? Or,
Oh, I love
something
that scene so much.
Yeah. So it's like, but I feel like since then, and since the fight itself with him, obviously, there hasn't really been much in that. Now, granted, we haven't really seen Ahsoka very much since then, but still.
I do want to address the super chat that came up while I was away for a second. From another one from Wisdom Minari. Why can't Jedi, quote unquote, sense people near them anymore, especially someone they presumably are close to? I guess I want to know, like, when is that a thing?
I guess he's asking, why didn't Ahsoka sense that Sabine was in danger?
Well, like, I guess that is a thing that can happen. Like, Palpatine sensed Vader was in danger in Revenge of the Sith. So maybe, I don't know.
Well, they're both definitively Force sensitive, and they've been close to each other. Luke and Leia both have Force sensitivity, even if Leia doesn't know it at the time.
Right, she's able to sense that Luke is in danger and find exactly where he is too in relation to her.
I don't know.
I think that's the fix for that is like have Ahsoka sense it pretty much as Hoyang walks in. So like Hoyang walks in to give the news, and Ahsoka like kind of already knows what he's about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a minor problem. I mean, effectively, it doesn't change much in the plot because it still would have facilitated the exact same outcome, right? Of like her being slightly too late to get there. But I agree that it's a slight annoyance that it's not consistent. To hark back, sorry, because like while you were out with Sheev, we were talking about like how I was listening. I know. Vader's spectre on Ahsoka and things like that. We kind of had this discussion. Did I have it with you, or did I have it with my sister? Where I was like, it's weird that, like, I presume he might be dead by this point, but if Rex was in the show, for example, you could at this point he'd be like bloody ancient, right? Be like 100 biologically.
He'd be like 80 something right now, 82, I think. Yeah,
you could have had a really in the same way that like Andor Cassian was taking care of his like mum, his adopted mum, and she was like too sick to move at certain points. You could have had that kind of dynamic where like Rex is on her ship, but he's too old to get involved anymore, and like he's slowly dying, and like she's never told him what Anakin became. So he keeps on saying things that are meant to be like reassuring to her, like, oh, Sabine reminds me so much of Anakin, and like you're doing a great job, and like, oh, General Skywalker would have loved that you did this. And he's trying to be like encouraging, and it's just getting at her more and more because like obviously, culminating in like an argument towards the end of the series, like during her low point where she like snaps at him the truth, what actually happened, and just breaks. Like Rex, who's this old man near death, just breaks him.
No, and, like, I don't want to see that. No,
well, because the thing is, that would make for a really great character moment of just like, just things like that, right? It doesn't have to be like even things like Sabine training with a lightsaber, and like she's mimicking, because like Ezra had the holocron of Anakin teaching, right? Maybe Sabine is like, trying to train alongside that recording. And Ahsoka's just like looking at it and like having flashbacks and just like it should be a bigger thing, is what I'm saying.
One thing they could do if like Sabine or Hera or whoever, like if Sabine actually knew what happened to Anakin, what he eventually became, like they could have a sort of dynamic where like Sabine is trying really hard to show that she's not like that and she won't become that. Maybe like at some point, like when they're having a really heated argument, she just blurts out, "I'm not Anakin," and that like stops Ahsoka right in her tracks.
Yeah, a bit on the nose, but something like that. I mean, just basically, something like that is what's needed here.
And let's add a caveat here that it's possible that it could happen in the next 6 episodes. It's
That's
possible.
true.
Sure,
It could. I guess my problem then would be like, I don't think there's been enough foreshadowing of it now at that
Well,
point.
I also don't think
Yeah.
yes, they could develop a lot of these things in later episodes, but like what they have developed so far hasn't been developed enough, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's all very thin.
Yep.
And we'll even get into that a little more in the second episode because of some of the things that like Ahsoka and Sabine's dynamic after the fallout of Shin getting away with the map. I have a lot to say.
Yeah, that's the clearest example, right? Of like, if we had these payoffs in later episodes that we're kind of alluding to, the support that's been built up for them is not nearly enough to support their weight.
Mm-hmm.
Those payoffs would just fall flat because I wouldn't believe them on the weakness of what's been presented so far.
Dark Winter, I agree that I am doubtful of it as well. I'm just saying that it could happen.
He's watching this, he's like fervently taking notes, like fuck, I got this wrong.
It's like, genius, quickly, let's do reshoots.
Because that's always what saves projects, right? It's reshoots.
Yeah. Anyway, to get back to the episode, so Sabine worked out the map puzzle in about 2 seconds after feeding her cat.
Yeah. All right. Fine.
Also, weird moment, which again my sister pointed out to me, which is like once she solved the map, she runs outside with like a pair of binoculars and looks up at the night sky. And I'm like, I get what they're going for here, which is like she's looking for where the map's pointing to. And it's like a wonder of excitement of adventure and discovery. But like, these are binoculars, and you're in atmosphere. What the fuck are you looking at?
I know, Jolly. I was thinking the same thing. It's pretty funny.
Like, the thing is, like, it's just a funny moment, but also like it's there for a very annoying reason, and it's to get her onto the balcony so that she can be ambushed.
Yep. God, I have a lot of notes that are about the Ahsoka stuff that we just went over, so let me find where I'm at. An exchange between Ahsoka and Hera. Yeah. Okay. So we're at the scene where Shin and the droids, or specifically the droids first. Shin's kind of just down on the ground waiting. The droids ambush Sabine. There's 2 of them. They each have weapons. One of them even actually pulls out her gun to shoot at her, but she's able to just dodge it. Which, like, how do you guys feel about that? Because it's kind of like, reflexes really fast.
I have many things to say about this fight. So where do we start? So the first thing is she punches a metal droid and dazes it, which what?
Well, she slams its face against the rail too, and you're like, huh?
How is your hand not broken, lady? And how is this droid stunned? It's an assassin droid.
It's a droid.
Well, it's a droid specifically built for close quarters combat. I don't understand how you can stun it. But
yeah,
whatever. There's also the bit where like one of these droids grabs her from behind. And first of all, it's amazing that it's not strong enough just to crush her.
But also, it doesn't pull out its gun that it has and could just shoot her in the back with.
Well, also on top of that, there is another droid standing. Like obviously, she gets grabbed and she's being held from behind. There is another droid standing right in front of her that now has a free and open target and a weapon. But rather than shoot her, it runs into the room to grab something and then shoot up the place. Like you could have just done that one first and then gone into the room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it gets the map and shoots all the records that she had of like what it, like how to open it and everything, and like what it leads to.
Well, so
they're up a creek after this, essentially.
Yeah, it reminds me of the stupid trope where rather than just like killing someone with their weapon, they like grab them by the throat and like toss them or something.
Yeah,
that kind of shit. It's just like, we're gonna grab you so you have a chance to actually get out of this.
It's just your classic plot armor. Like Sabine, we'll get to this when we get to the lightsaber stab, because people are arguing plot armor in the wrong places, weirdly. But like, there is heavy plot armor in this scene, just not where everyone thinks it is.
Yeah. So I mean, she is able to like while being held by this droid, she's able to grab its still holstered gun, shoot it in like the back of the foot, like as it's still pointing downward, which causes it to like start jumping up and down, like ow, ow. And that's how she's able to get free. And then I think, what does she do? She like grabs the gun and shoots him in the face.
She shoots it in the chest. Yeah. In
the chest. Oh, the chest where the bombs are. Can they? I mean, she doesn't know that. Can the bombs go off by like being stabbed? Or because like in the second episode when Ahsoka fights one of these, she stabs it in the chest, and like when I clocked that, and I was like, I hope that doesn't like. I guess it doesn't.
Well, I'm guessing it's going to be like almost like plastic explosives, right? Of like, you can't just set them off by just like lighting them on fire or whatever. You have to pass an electric charge through them. It might be something like that. I mean, I guess plasma is electrified ionized matter, but oh well.
I guess they are establishing that because like they do it and it doesn't go off, so I guess that's fine.
Yeah, it needs some kind of specific trigger, I guess.
Assassin droids that aren't very good at assassinating. Nice. Yeah, I'm just picturing like I'm picturing HK-47 watching this episode and just like shaking his head.
It's like, I'm so disappointed in my children.
Well, I mean, it's Star Wars, right? So if we have Zam Wesell and fucking Jango Fett to go off of, none of the droid, no assassin in Star Wars is actually competent. This is just
oh my god, Sheev. We've replaced the two worms with the 2 droids.
No, the droids are just their mech suits. The 2 worms are inside of a little bomb.
they're driving around like Jaegers.
Yeah, or like Plankton from SpongeBob.
But yeah, she shoots it in the chest and kills the worm, and the other one's like, "No, Jerry, no,
Clancy." So then after she kills that one droid, the other droid that grabbed the map and made off with it, she's chasing it, but it gets into the elevator and closes the door just in time, so she's not able to. I guess there's not like a door open button that like, because when like an elevator door closes, you can immediately just reopen it, right? It's not like it's not like you just
droid wasn't holding the door for her.
Well, so she can't get it, and he's going down the elevator, and she runs back into the tower room. I thought she was going for her armor, or at the very least her jetpack, because then she can activate that and just fly down there and intercept the droid. But instead, she grabs Ezra's lightsaber. She like abandons any pretense of using a blaster, which she's far more proficient with and would, be useful in a pursuit because it's a long-range weapon. She grabs the lightsaber, waits for the elevator, takes that down, and then comes on out, and that's where she like encounters the droid and Shin. And it's like,
and
okay.
Well, there's 2 things to say about this, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, off to you, Odrin.
Just one quick thing. It's such a small moment, but I love the trope of her, like when an elevator door closes and the person just starts banging on it, like that's gonna fucking do anything. Like she did that for a brief moment, and I couldn't help but laugh at that.
Like she does that, and the door reopens, and the droid's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to get in?"
Going down.
Yeah, there's just elevator music played while she's like slowly going down.
And then someone in the chat is like, "Oh, this elevator music just doesn't fit the tone of Star Wars. It took me out of the show." But yeah, so there's 2 things, right? Like, so first is why. Well, hang on.
Go ahead.
So why would you grab a lightsaber? Because at this point, all she's seen are these 2 robots, right? The only reason to grab a lightsaber would be if you think you're about to fight someone with a lightsaber, and she doesn't think that. So what the fuck?
She has no way of knowing
and secondly, also she gets down and like Shin and the droids have just been waiting for her. Why? You've got the map. Fuck off. Just leave.
Yeah, I don't know why they waited. Because that's why I emphasize the fact that instead of going for the jetpack, she like went for the lightsaber and then like waited on the elevator to come back up and then took it back down. It's like, a lot of time that would have taken a lot of time. And they're in a hurry to just leave. So why did they wait for her? That's
it's a mischaracterization moment for Shin, right? Because presumably her mission is to recover the map, but she hung around to fight Sabine, and you could have used that to characterize her as like someone who's desperate to prove herself, or like is comparing herself to Sabine as as in terms of 2 apprentices being compared, right? She could have gone back, and Balin could have been like, "So you left a droid behind as a loose end. What's up with that?" And she's like, "Well, I fought Sabine Wren and I won." And he's like, "You idiot! Like it's you've jeopardized the mission."
Yeah.
Your desperation to
she's like, she couldn't.
Your desperation to prove yourself has jeopardized everything we're working for, something like that. But we don't get that. We don't get anything for why she stuck around. Yeah. She just did.
I mean,
I kind of love when she sees Shin and the droid. Like Shin kind of steps up, hands the droid the map, and the droid's just kind of like, I'm gonna hang back. I'll let you take care of this. It's like so awkward. Yeah. You're like, yeah, there it is.
You got this.
This droid's just like, okay, I'll be here if you need me.
Do my thing.
But I guess one competent move that Sabine made was actually calling for backup from Hing Yang, which that's nice.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Fair.
I mean, it's weird that Ahsoka or Sabine didn't also contact the defense force that we know this planet has.
Yeah, because even when because Shin gets away at the end after stabbing Sabine, we've alluded to it enough, and people have defended so Ahsoka abandoned pursuit of her to make sure Sabine gets medical attention. It's fine, Shin should not have been able to get off of Lethal without being at least pursued by the defense force, right?
Which again is a characterization moment we've missed for her. Of like she could be shown, her competence could be on display of like successfully evading several E-fighters.
Yeah, but like after the fight, it just immediately cuts to black, and then we start off in the medical bay in the next episode. It's like, I feel like we missed stuff. Missed some important stuff here, but okay.
The fight itself, the choreography of Shin versus before we get to the stab, the choreography of Shin versus Sabine. How are we all feeling?
Yeah.
We did the same thing.
It's okay. I mean, there are a few moments where I'm like, this feels a little Kenobi-esque, but like for the most part, it's fine.
There's a very funny thing of like, so several times in the fight, I said like 2 or 3 times. I think it's actually, it might even be 3 times. Shin does a move where she like uses, she sweeps across in a horizontal slice with one hand, and with the other hand grabs the edge of her cape and swings it round as a kind of distraction, into Sabine's face. And I'm like, that's fine. That's an actual thing actual sword fighters do. However, you do it once. You don't do it like 3 times on repeat, because at that point they just clock what you're doing and stab through it and kill you.
Yeah.
Like,
see,
I thought
it was very funny, because what that looked like to me was that she was grabbing her cape as though it would enforce, or like it would reinforce the strength of her punch. And I was just like, I guess. I know it's not what she was actually doing. It's just, that's what I thought at first. And it made me laugh unreasonably.
Like what they do in like WWE or something like that. I don't know. Like weird moves like that.
Because the cloak is going to like make my punch more, more impactful.
It's a force cloak. Don't you know? But yeah, so the fight occurs, and like Shin, thank God this is the case, dominates the fight, and then it results in a move where Shin does a forward stab where she has to like step forward and put her weight on her front foot to launch a stab into the side of Sabine, into Sabine's side. So the first thing to address is the supposed fatality of the strike.
Right. Well, so hang on. Before we even do that, like, let's lay it out. People all over have been making a big, hissy fit about her surviving this. When Reva survived in Kenobi, I really thought we were all on the same page as to why that was stupid. It wasn't just that she survived getting stabbed with a lightsaber. It was that she survived, with like being left for dead and just laying there for several hours. Like
for the second time in her life. For the second time in her life.
Well, I'm kind of alluding to both, because this happened in both times that she got stabbed, where she was just laying there without any sufficient medical attention, and she was left for dead. Like, and she was also stabbed in a much more vital area, if I remember correctly. It wasn't just that she survived the stab. That's fine. You can survive lightsaber stabs.
Well, so that's okay. So that's where we need to get into this, right? Because people. The arguments have run like, oh, any lightsaber stab is fatal. And it's like, why would that be the case, though? Because, like, it's like comparing, like, so where Sabine is stabbed, the placement of her stab is somewhere below, at the bottom of her right lung to the top of her right the right side of her large intestine. So somewhere, it changes between shots because they're not terribly consistent with this, but somewhere between her liver, kidney, gallbladder, and top of her intestine. Yeah. Now, those are all, not things you want to lose the function of. They're all very useful. You would like them all to be working in an ideal world. However, none of those places is an immediately fatal area, particularly when you've been stabbed with a weapon that cauterizes the wound.
Right, so there's no threat of bleeding out.
Yeah, because that's the main... If you're stabbed with a sword in that area, your main concern in terms of immediate danger is not that you were stabbed in the kidney or the liver, because it'll take about a day or 2 for a failed liver to kill you. It's that you are going to bleed to death without immediate attention. A cauterizing weapon stops that from happening.
Yeah, like an immediate fatal stab would be like through the heart,
Yeah. Well, because people make the comparison, right? So why is the Reva example stupid, and why did Qui-Gon die? It's like, Qui-Gon died because he was stabbed through the mid-sternum, so his spine is severed, and possibly his heart as well. In fact, if there's an inconsistency in that scene, it's that he survives for arguably way too long. Post from where he's been stabbed. Reva and the Grand Inquisitor are both stabbed in basically the same area and somehow walk away from it. That's what makes that
while
stupid.
Being left for dead and receiving no sufficient medical attention in an immediate time frame.
Yeah. They are hit in a far more immediately vital area, as in imminent death areas, and somehow walk it off. It's bizarre.
But Jolly, what about the fact that lightsabers are really hot? Wouldn't that make the organs burn?
Okay, let's address this.
Stabs the metal door, and it looks really hot.
Stop. Okay, right. So let's address this. Let's address this. I mean, the first thing before I even have to give like an explanation is, I do like this is a fictional universe. I do not give a fuck if its internal science doesn't line up with real world science, provided the rules internally remain consistent.
Mhm.
If what we are shown on screen is that a stab is not something that like vaporizes your internal organs, then that is the rule, no matter how silly you think that it would be in real life. Now, that aside, let's actually look at the real life science about this. So, a plasma blade in real life, so a plasma torch cutter, burns at roughly 25,000 degrees Celsius. It's very hot.
Yeah.
Now,
if you
metal
touch it, you go, ouch.
Well, no, not even that, because like it's so hot that your nerves would burn away so completely that you wouldn't feel pain from that area.
Yeah.
It's like a severe burn victim. Like you feel pain in the tissue that has just survived enough that your nerves are still operating. But anything that's severely burned, there won't be anything there to transmit pain. But yeah, so what's happened is a blade has been plunged into her. Now, the way that lightsabers have worked and have always worked is that the heat of the blade does not extend beyond the confines of the blade, because we have had multiple scenes in multiple elements of this franchise, both Disney canon and regular canon, where lightsabers have been held mere centimeters away from people's faces and they are not burning. And I remind you, this is a 25,000 degrees Celsius blade, so clearly the heat is not extending beyond the field.
Put that to one side. There are characters who get dismembered constantly, and if the lightsabers were actually operating the way these people are arguing, those people would die immediately from getting even like making physical contact with the blade, even in a non-vital area like a hand.
Yeah, as in like, because people are like, oh, if you swept it across a hand quickly enough, you'd cauterize without exploding them. It's like, no, if it's that hot, you're exploding long before the wound has a chance to cauterize.
Yeah,
we're talking nanoseconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sorry. So that aside, the other thing is like we know the heat doesn't extend beyond the blade's radius, because that's just an established part of the law at this point. Now, that means that when you are stabbed, the thing that happens to you is anything within the circumference of the blade's field, so anything the blade is touching directly, is incinerated. Like, not just incinerated, it is turned into ionized matter. It is turned into plasma, i.e. the same material that the blade is made of, and therefore, I presume, subject to being kept in the same place by the same field that is keeping the blade in the shape that it is in, right? It's not escaping the confines of the blade's field, because it's the same kind of matter that the field was designed to contain. Now, that is different from when you plunge a lightsaber into a giant metal steel door, because metal and flesh have different properties when you heat them. So, liquid, like when you superheat a piece of steel to 25,000 degrees Celsius, you turn it into very runny molten metal, not plasma. That metal flows outside of the field's radius because it's a liquid now, a superheated liquid. And the second it's outside of the field's radius, it starts transmitting that heat to everything else it's touching, which is the edges of the door around where the blade is struck. That is why you get the melted effect. Now, for those who are then going to respond to me like, okay, so why is there not just like a neat hole in a person that they immediately start bleeding out of when you pull the blade out of? Like, why is that charring around the edges? Several reasons. The first is, I presume the blade is like cooler at its edges than it is at its core, hence why it's a different color at the core than it is at its edges. So the burning will be gradiated, I should say. And on top of that, there are some materials from, like, if I stuck a piece of superheated plasma into like a bone, calcium is not going to turn into a plasma at 25,000 degrees Celsius. It'll just turn into, and the carbon in your cells won't either. It'll just become superheated carbon and calcium particles that will then be pushed to the edge of the blade and burn the surrounding tissue, which is why you get this kind of crispy effect on the outside rim of the wounds. However, to summarize, you are not going to explode if I stab you with a lightsaber blade. It's not going to boil your internal organs. That would be utterly inconsistent with canon. People need to stop making this argument. It's really pissing me off. Please just become even vaguely literate in basic physics. Please, I beg you.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing is, again, receiving immediate medical attention. Sabine did. The criticism that, of course, we have is that she heals up really quickly.
Yes,
which is a
that's
problem.
the actual criticism.
Episode. That's the problem. Her surviving the stab at all is fine. There it is. We've been waiting for God, when did the episode come out? Like 4 or 5 days ago?
Yeah, and ever since then,
a constant flurry of bad arguments for why like lightsaber stabs are immediately fatal, and it's just
I don't get it, right? Like Ahsoka is quite low hanging fruit as far as criticism goes. Like you do not need a degree in advanced physics. Like this is not like this is not like when you look at Interstellar and someone's like, oh, that's not how bulk physics works, right? Like you don't need an advanced degree to get this. This is very basic heat transfer. Please, when we have such low hanging fruit, please think before you open your mouths, everyone. Like there are very obvious things to criticize here, like the recovery time, without having to invent bullshit.
And the way she recovers, like, so people have said, like, yeah, she was probably put in like a back to tank or something, and it's like even then, like she did. Either the next episode either starts off the immediate next day, and she's already like sitting up and she's fine, or it's been like several days, if not a week, and for some reason Ahsoka never went back to the tower at any point. So it's like either way, we're looking at a kind of a fucky time frame, I think.
Well, you know, it's funny to think about it, if that was the case. I think Ahsoka, during the scene when they're like dissecting the droid head, Ahsoka says like, no, we can't move it because we've wasted enough time as it is. It's like, well,
yeah,
whose fault is that?
I don't think so. If you did wait a week to go investigate the tower, like you're an idiot and inconsistent. But yeah, so that was episode 1. We're only 2.5 hours into the stream.
There's one last thing to say about the stab, which is and this is like a potentially genuine criticism, and I say potential because we just don't have enough information yet. Which is, once Shin has stabbed her, why not just move your lightsaber, like, you know, turn your hand, cut her in half? Why not do that?
Yes, but it could just, I mean, we don't know enough about Shin as a character yet, but I don't get the impression that she wanted to kill Sabine if she didn't have to. She's incapacitated, and now I have the map, I can leave.
Yeah, so that's because like there are 3 potential answers, right? One is that it's a contrivance, it's a problem, and that's just plot armor in action. That's possibility number 1. Possibility number 2 is that Shin has different motives to Morgan, or you know, and by extension, Baylan does, and that Shin was not actually trying to kill Sabine and was just trying to incapacitate her, and that's why she went for a non-fatal stab rather than directly through the sternum. I think that is so far in line with what we have seen, but we will need more information to confirm that.
Yeah.
And then the third possibility was like, which is I don't actually subscribe to, is like because of the placement of the stab and the fact that she was on the front foot and where Sabine's blade was, that taking the extra millisecond to, like, you know, wave her lightsaber sideways would have allowed time for Sabine to bring down her lightsaber and essentially make it a mutual kill.
Yeah.
I don't actually subscribe to that, but it's possible. I think the answer is that Shin didn't want to kill, just didn't want to kill Sabine.
Yeah. She's incapacitated. Got the map. Let's leave. Which again is already inconsistent with like, yeah, but you had the map already and you didn't have to fight her at all, and you did. So, good job.
Well done, Shin.
But yeah, so that's episode 1, and we're 2.5 hours into the stream. So how are we feeling?
Good. I mean, to be fair, the next one's going to go by quicker because there's less, I think, to say. Less happens.
Yeah.
Would you like to recap this one as well? Because you're better at it typically, and I just.
Actually, well, Odrin, do you want to do it, or are people happy for me to take it?
I'm happy. You can if you want to. I mean, I took notes, but it's.
Well, no, please, because I can't remember the second one in order nearly as well as I remember the first one, like in terms of the events that happened in sequence. So please take this away from me if you can.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
well, I can just go ahead and do this if you don't want to.
Well, the opening scene was her waking up in the hospital, was it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, Ahsoka's with her. And I can't remember, is this the scene where Hera has called in yet, or has that not happened yet?
No, that is later. But basically Sabine wakes up and Ahsoka and I think Huyang are also like there and basically just recapping what happened. You know, Shin got away with the map. Sabine tells Ahsoka, like, you know, I unlocked it and now they've gone away with the map it's been unlocked. And so already there's something to say about this. My initial criticism of this scene was that Ahsoka should be furious and she doesn't seem to be. You know, she should be really laying it all out for Sabine and like getting really pissed. But then as I was rewatching the episode, I realized the show is clearly painting it as though she is pissed at Sabine, and Sabine feels very regretful for like the way things played out because this is essentially all her fault, other than the fact that Ahsoka really should have chased after her and she didn't. And like the episode is clearly like creating that as a dynamic for them, that Ahsoka's pissed off and Sabine feels guilty. You just really can't tell. And I think the reason why is because like it's a mixture of things, right? Bad directing on Dave's part in terms of like what he wants Rosario to do. Like I get the impression that he told her Ahsoka is stoic, be stoic, and she's just kind of following that, and so she's not emoting as much as like we've typically seen from Ahsoka.
Yeah, she's following that for every single scene.
Yeah, which people are saying that she has no charisma and that she's bad at acting and everything. And it's like, I can't blame you for thinking that, considering she hasn't done any real acting at all in this show yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is like she's just her style of acting is always being like quite reserved anyway. Like you look at like Nurse Temple and Daredevil, like she's much better at emoting than she is here, but it's still like her acting style is very like reserved. And so like if you take an actor that's their style and tell them to act even more robotically, you get a stilted performance, and that seems to be what's happened here.
Well, then I just want to question like why even is that the direction that she was given? Because it's closer to the samurai movies that Filoni really likes. But even in Rebels, I would have called Ahsoka stoic, but she was still emotive. She still like had expressions on her face, and she like reacted to things the way a person would.
This comes down to the differences between voice actors and directing a voice, or rather, say directing voice actors versus directing stage and film actors, right? Which is that like film actors and stage actors are far more reliant, but like they are far more accustomed to having a director tell them very explicitly, like, this is where I want you to roughly take the scene, right? I want you to do this with your character. A voice actor is much more independent. They're given a script and they're given sort of like directing notes, but then they kind of just take it in their own way most of the time. Yeah. And that, from what I understand from behind the scenes on Rebels, is very much what happened. Like Sam Witwer has often talked about how he would correct Filoni on things. It seems like the voice actors were far more assertive with telling Filoni when they thought he was wrong, versus Rosario Dawson and the film actors.
Well, and it could even be like Rosario and like Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Natasha Liz Bordeaux. Is that her name?
I think so.
Plays Sabine. These aren't the original actors for these characters, and maybe they feel it's not their place to tell the person who created them like where they think he's wrong in terms of like how he wants them to be portrayed.
Yeah, or even whether they've watched the old portrayals.
Yeah, I mean, Rosario might have, but based on at least what Rosario has claimed in interviews, I believe, she likes the character of Ahsoka, and she like always lobbied to play the character. So it's possible that she has that level of admiration for what Filoni has made, that she doesn't like feel that she's in a position to be able to tell him off, you know?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Either way, whatever like reasons that happened that led us to this end result, it's still the same end result. She just really does not express any emotion one way or another. And that could potentially be a character thing. It could be that she's overcorrecting and trying to be like not emotional at all, and in so doing, she's kind of bottling it up and like not and like refusing to let people see it.
No, it's true, because it's possible that based on where Ahsoka is in the current canon, like after she had her fight with Vader, after everything that happened, like maybe they're fearful that if they have her express too much emotion, it's going to come off as like, well, she shouldn't be this happy, because she's gone through some shit. So
she doesn't need to be happy. She just needs to.
I understand, but I'm just saying that might be the mentality from their perspectives, where it's like
maybe
we really need her to be stoic, because if we can't have her have too much optimism, like I don't know.
The counter I'd have to that is like, this is not just a Rosario problem. This seems to be like a consistent thing with a lot of the characters in this show, is that they are being directed to be stoic. Like Hera's like this, Balin's like this, Morgan's like this, Shin is like this, Sabine is like this, Poyang is like this.
Which is like, why would you waste David Tennant like that? Let him emote. Let him do his thing.
I mean, I'll be honest.
You dare put baby in a corner.
I don't have anywhere near as much of a problem with Hera. I think she still has like a little bit of an element.
Well, I mean, Odrin, we do. Screw you.
I mean, just when it comes to the stoicism thing, I mean, I don't have quite as much of a problem with that as I do with like the others. Because
Hera was always like the stronger sort of put together character in the show, but she
Yeah.
had her moments where she lost her cool and that she got really expressive, and those are some of her best moments.
Well, so again, this is almost the Qui-Gon thing all over again from the prequels of like, or just the wooden acting generally from the prequels. There is a difference, critical drinker, between being stoic and being like firm and emotionless. So like these are three different things. So Hera was always firm. Hera was always assertive. She was not emotionless. She was very, very quick to demonstrate when she was angry or proud or relieved. In fact, she was very like, happy to use her emotions with, because she was confident in herself.
One of my favorite little exchanges is when Thrawn bombards them on Atollon and Kanan's out in the field. He's not like under the shield like they are, so he's taking the fire, but he manages to find cover, and she's like calling him, and she's like, Kanan, and then he responds like, I think Thrawn might actually be trying to kill us this time, and she's like, oh, that is only funny because you're still alive.
Yeah, now come back, love.
Yeah, and the scene where she's getting really emotional with her father. I think that was pretty good too.
Oh yeah, or even something like when she gets really angry when Thrawn is talking about the Kalikori. Actually, and again, on top of like, a character who is actually stoic and showing that stoic does not mean a robotic, is Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon is very stoic. He's very like reserved and wise. However, there are definite moments where he's like trolling people or like laughing or giggling or something. Like my favorite one is like Qui-Gon is very clearly aware the whole way through the movie, judging from his reaction to her quote unquote reveal, he's very aware that Padme is really the queen. And therefore the bit on Tatooine where Padme is like, I don't think the queen would approve of this. And he smirks at her and goes, well, the queen doesn't have to know, does she? knowing full well that she's the queen, but can't fucking say anything. And therefore has to like, she's like grumpily pout like, well, I don't approve.
That part where they're about to watch the pod race and he like bends down like to her level, like all condescendingly almost. And he's like, the queen trusts my judgment. So should you.
He's like, Qui-Gon is secretly a meme lord. Prove me wrong.
No, he's having a good fucking time. He's really trolling. Yeah, he's stoic. That does not mean he's emotionless.
I like his reaction as well when Obi-Wan's like, you were right, master. The negotiations were short. And Qui-Gon's like, bitch, please.
If like you replaced Qui-Gon with Ahsoka and gave her the exact same role in The Phantom Menace, like she found Anakin, she brought him back to the temple, and the Jedi were like, we're not going to train him. Like, remember, he had a very surprised reaction. And if it was Ahsoka and it was this show and it was directed by Dave Filoni, her face would not have changed at all. Should have been like, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Her delivery would have been like, the ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
And like, I want to make this super clear. I am not harping on Rosario Dawson. I think she's a fine actress. And again, I've seen her in Daredevil, and I like her a lot in that. And I think she's given a lot of good material to work with, and she does really well with it.
Well, it's just like, Natalie Portman and Samuel L. Jackson and all those people. They're all great actors. They did a shit job in the prequels because of how they were directed.
Any direction, yeah.
Well, as to Jolly's original point about Rosario, like I remember a scene in Daredevil where she's like patching up like a gangster or something, or like a gang member, and he's like moaning and groaning at her about something, and she like basically like straightens him out. She's like, listen to me. This morning you had 5 fingers, now you have 3. Like she's, so even though she's being very firm, there's still like, intent in her voice,
Yeah. Or the scene where she's telling Matt that she can't be with him because she doesn't trust that he's not going to destroy himself.
Yep. Oh, I love that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Anyway, Ahsoka.
Yeah. So episode 2, she walks out of the med bay, and what's the next scene after this? Then?
Isn't that like then she goes to the tower?
Oh well, yes. She submits the ability to do psychometry. Which thoughts?
I don't like that.
No, I don't either.
That is supposed to be a super rare special Jedi ability. People already hated it with Rey, and I was like, I'm fine with that because, like, again, like as long as it's not just given to everyone, like some people can just have it. That's fine. Cal Kestis has it. Quinlan Vos has it. But like it was clearly treated as a special ability that Quinlan Vos had in the Clone Wars, and that's why he was useful. In the one episode he was in where they completely butchered his character in terms of adaptation. it's not just something any Jedi has, and it's not something Ahsoka's ever been shown to have, but now she just can.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? It's like it's more just like once we've established that a Jedi does not have it, because it seems to be like a very like instinctive thing, right, rather than a trained thing. Like once we've established that she doesn't have it, you can't then suddenly manifest her having the ability to do that. That's bonkers.
No. Kind of reminds me of like what people were saying about the Force Awakens back when that movie first came out. It's like, nah, see, there's been a change in the Force. Now people are going to experience Force powers that they didn't previously have before. Maybe something else has happened here, you know?
It's just Rey just has that power.
Well,
She's just one of the
Sheev,
few people that does.
Sheev, you recently read my my script offshoot about what I think about Rey and her powers. So you know, I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, because she needs another one.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a fan of Ahsoka having psychometry, and it just feels weird because it's like we're not learning anything new, nor is she. Like we're just finding out that Shin and Sabine confronted each other, which
Sabine could have just told us.
We knew that, and so did she.
Yeah, like all she needs to do is like look around for like the remnants of the previous droid, and then like search that immediate area. So she goes to the top of the tower and she sees the droid that got destroyed. She's like, okay, it's got to be up here, I guess.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like you could almost have shot it like Aragorn's tracking in Two Towers, where like there's like she's like looking at scorch marks on the ground, and she's like speaking out loud to herself what's happening, whilst we get like flashes of like the sound. But like that's not what we're like. This is like very clearly not meant to be like just dynamic editing, sound editing. This is just like no, this is a Force power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, what reason did she have to believe that the second droid would still be here? I don't understand.
Well, I guess the idea is like Sabine says, "Oh, I took one out at the top of the tower," and Ahsoka's like, "Really? What did you do?" And she's like, "Well, I shot it in the chest, and then I chased them down, and presumably Ahsoka saw Shin leaving without the second droid, fleeing the scene. So she's like, "Oh, the second droid is still on planet now." Why the droid is still in the tower is a bit of a question.
Okay, so there's a few things to this. The criticism is, why would you send a droid to like be there, assuming that like the droid was sent there and not just left behind? Because it could easily just be that Shin was leaving in a hurry and wasn't able to get the droid to come with her. So he's just kind of hanging around. But if that isn't the case, and Shin sent him there specifically for like, I guess, to kill Ahsoka, maybe, why did he wait in the tower? And also, when she does come back to the tower, why does he attack her rather than just setting off the explosive in his chest, which we've seen the effects of?
Yeah, the extent of that, she's not outrunning that.
Yeah, she's not outrunning that. Well, also, like, even if, because someone defended that by saying like, it takes a few seconds for it to charge up, and she might be able to get away in time. Which no, but even if that was the case, like, she doesn't even have to be aware that it's happening. If he set the thing off when she was close enough to the tower, like, it would just have exploded and killed her.
Yeah.
She would never have even entered the tower.
Yeah. The thing is, like, why the droids? Because again, like, I think it's fair to say that I don't think Shin had time to pick up her droid. She was fleeing the scene.
Yeah.
As for why the droid remained in the building, I'm going to be good faith and presume that like the mission parameters for these droids ran thusly in terms of priority: secure the map, and then if you can, kill Sabine, which leads to questions as to why I didn't shoot her on the way in to destroy the map room, but fuck it. Then the big question is like, if it does have this kill order, then use your bomb, and if it doesn't, why have you stuck around and made yourself an incriminating piece of evidence? Wouldn't you have detonated yourself anyway to avoid the compromising of your mission? Like that failsafe that IG-11 supposedly fucking had.
well, and that they clearly seem to have in the first episode when they decided to blow themselves up instead of letting Ahsoka escape with the map so that it didn't get destroyed.
Yeah, and it would have not only erased any evidence, but it would have killed Sabine as well. It would have finished her off. Another thing that I find interesting is like, okay, Shin, she didn't have time to retrieve the droid, but she did have time to run back to the droid and grab the map out of its hand. I don't know.
And what?
No, the droid that she's got the map, like the droid that gets away with her is the one that had the map. The one that's left in the tower is the one that's Sabine shot.
And you know what? Like imagine the emotion and like the absolute somberness of like Sabine coming back to the tower to see it just completely in ruins. It's been destroyed utterly.
Oh yeah, all of Ezra's old things.
The message that he left her is gone. Like that could be a great motivator for her.
The Loth Cat was there.
Oh no, no, they killed the Loth Cat.
Oh God.
How funny
That's
would it have
pretty
been
morbid.
if it turned out that she named the Loth Cat like Ezra or Kanan or something?
Oh. Yeah, like that could have been a really, really touching, like sad, emotional moment that could have reinforced Sabine's resolve in wanting to find Ezra and bring him home and put a stop to these people before they can bring Thrawn back to power.
Well, you
And
see,
it
we needed the tower attack so we could have the Mulan haircutting scene.
Yeah. Well, and if it had detonated, that would have been the second time this year that we would have seen a big explosion from the top of a tower in a movie. So that would have been nice. Like Ahsoka's returning to the set of Oppenheimer and sees all this.
Like the droid is about to detonate, and Shin's like, "So there's like a 2% chance it's going to destroy the atmosphere." I'm like, "What?"
But yeah, so that's that scene. She goes back to the tower and then fights the droid. And again, so it's like instead of attacking her, or instead of just blowing up so that no information can be recovered, what's happened instead is this droid was left behind and then decided to attack her and get destroyed easily so that Ahsoka could then recover its head and bring it back to the hospital room and bring it to Sabine and see if she can maybe crack it. If this didn't happen, none of the characters would have had any information to go on in order to continue the investigation. They would have been up a creek.
Well,
Yep,
and
it's
it's also funny to think about, like, you know, Sabine tells Ahsoka that she destroyed one of them, and Ahsoka's like, "I'm not buying it. No, you didn't. You didn't destroy it. You don't know how to destroy a droid." Like she goes back, like, because Sabine does say, "I destroyed one of them," but she still goes back anyway. I don't know.
Well, I guess even if it was destroyed, right, the fact that it was shot in the chest means that you could recover its head.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Which, okay, so this does bring us to the bomb scene in the hospital. Now,
Oh yeah,
I misinterpreted this. So anyone who was in my watch party and like also thought this and it continues to think it, my bad. What I thought, because Sabine was basically saying I can crack it, but like to do that I'll have to do all this, technical shit, and that'll cause it to kind of overheat and it might explode. And what I thought that meant was like I was thinking of the big nuclear explosion from the bomb in their chest, when in actuality it would just be like the head explodes, and like Sabine's definitely in danger, and Huyang and Ahsoka probably are too.
Yeah.
But the explosion probably wouldn't leave the hospital room, like if that.
well yeah.
Huyang suggests moving to a different location because you still don't want a fucking bomb to go off in a hospital, but they argue that there isn't time, so they're like, let's do it here.
Yeah, holy hell! Can you imagine? Can you imagine if
I was originally thinking that like they were risking that nuclear explosion in the middle of the thriving metropolis on the Thal, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
Wow.
thankfully that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is like if the head overheats, it could basically explode from sheer overheating and turn into a shrapnel bomb in the room. And that's obviously dangerous to Sabine and Ahsoka. Now, I still think there's an issue here, which is like Huyang is so valuable. If he gets destroyed,
At least have him wait outside. I don't know.
yeah. But also, like, just to confirm this, right? Because like when he's like, oh, I think you raised this right, Sheev, when you're like, oh, but if it's just confined to the room, why does Huyang want so desperately to move it? And I'm like, move them away from this area. And I'm like, I think it's literally just Huyang is trying to preserve himself, right? Because he has them when Hera's like waves it on. Huyang's response is like, well, it's fine for you. You're a hologram.
Well, so the argument that I laid out is like, if they moved it to a different location, they would still be around the bomb when it went off, like presumably him as well. If he's just worried about his own safety, he could just leave, just walk out the room. It's fine. You're not needed for this.
Well, I guess the idea is like he doesn't want Ahsoka in the way either. I feel he's like, why don't we leave and like Sabine can do this somewhere else that isn't a hospital and that isn't a room we're standing in.
Yeah, and by the way, again, Sabine's just sitting up. Like, okay.
Oh yeah. Sabine's recovery rate was the big issue with the stab. Like people need to stop talking about the stab.
She's completely fine. You're like, oh, damn it.
But yeah, that weirdness aside, we just about also well done Huyang for pulling the plug. You legend.
Yeah, you absolute hero.
But yeah, they get the information that
they're able to find out that the droid was built on Corellia, and they're like, oh, Morgan Elsbeth used to have companies there.
Yeah, so they head off to Corellia.
Yeah, there's this line that I just want to note where she's like, that her assets were essentially supposed to be seized. Did anyone actually see to that? And like Hera kind of gives her a look like, oh shit, we probably should have done that.
Oh, another tick off the
That's-
competence meter for the New Republic.
That's really how
Well-
I interpreted that look from Hera. Like, you could disagree with me, Jolly, but I'd
Yeah.
want to hear arguments.
Well, as in, like, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but the implication I got from this episode was, which I thought they handled more or less competently, is like, yeah, Morgan's assets were seized, but like the seized in the way that every Empire facility was seized, right? Like Morgan may not have had direct control overtly in a legal sense, but like they didn't really have. Hera doesn't really know because that's not her department, right? As a general of a ship, she does not know whether it was followed up on, how thoroughly it was followed up on, like the loyalties of all the workers in the base and how minutely the New Republic handled that.
Yeah.
We get some more information on that later, which I actually think is more or less makes sense.
Yeah.
But until then,
Well, one thing I want to mention here, I find it kind of interesting. It continues to raise more questions about Morgan's backstory.
yes, it does.
And the earlier one, I think that was mentioned where she was
Like, how did a
Thrawn's
Night Sister
closest-
end up being one of the most prominent, like a very prominent figure in the Empire and like a close confidant to Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Yeah, exactly. Like they're like saying these things, and I'm just like, since when? Like, how did this happen?
Well, that's
I
the
don't know.
thing. Her being a Night Sister feels pulled out of her ass. Like, I just thought she was a wealthy businesswoman who did a lot of dealings with Thrawn.
Yeah.
Yep,
But like,
would
it's
have made
just,
more
oh, she's
sense.
also a Night Sister. It's like, okay, sure, fine.
Yeah, it's very strange.
You don't know the Sheev, but she's actually a very well qualified pastry chef as well.
She actually has a degree in chemical engineering. Also,
She went to university for law, Sheev.
I went to college.
Yeah, because like I don't know, you think about Merrin or whatever, a Jedi survivor. It's like, okay, the rest of her clan was destroyed. So what is she doing now? Well, she's going
Merrin,
around like helping people like against the Empire, because that's just.
No, Merrin also had a law degree. Maybe you didn't know that.
Oh no, of course, yeah. I just didn't know about that. Yeah,
Are lawyers like canon? Because I know that in the EU there was a lawyer who ended up joining Rogue Squadron.
I guess they kind of are, right? Because we
Well,
had
like-
an Andor.
well, and during Ahsoka's trial, like they,
Yeah, she was represented by Padme.
Padme,
so, like, it
I
seemed like
know, but-
senators just represent people in the courts for some reason. I don't know.
Well, I guess a military tribunal, not the courts, but
yeah, that was a big
well-
like Republic matter, like in terms of like public safety, I guess.
Okay, so lawyers are canon. I'm glad to know.
Yeah, I think that was the implication with the banking guy in Andor, right? When he was like the law, because then he said like the law is changing, so like we're having to adjust all our accountancy shit for that, which like strongly implies the existence of like corporate lawyers.
You'd
and
have to
things.
have lawyers to deal with all that shit. You can't
Just some sort of legal representative. I could see those being a thing.
Well, we have courts. It's established that we have courts.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
who's doing this?
can't remember. Is the next scene back at Stonehenge?
I think we
think
do
so,
go
yeah.
there. Yeah, we go to Stonehenge.
Right, so
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge is a weird one. So yeah, Morgan Elsbeth does some witchcraft, which like, oh my god, sure. The thing, so this scene then establishes like, so what's happened apparently is that Morgan Elsbeth started getting like whispers in her mind.
Oh
that
wait,
she
wait.
thinks,
Oh, I wanted to talk about we did skip something.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to talk about, this is the scene where Sabine and Hera like have their first actual one-on-one conversation without like Ahsoka or anyone else present. How are we feeling about it?
Uh,
I'm not a fan, really.
yeah.
I've talked to Jolly about this already. I don't think it's well directed, and the editing is just makes me have so many questions.
It does feel very what was the comparison I used, like when they had like layers, when they were inserting layers footage into Rise of Skywalker. It's like, it feels like what was a situation that's happened here is like we shot one half of this conversation ages ago, no longer have access to the actor, and have since changed the other side of the conversation. So the only way we can make this work is like really stiltedly like do alternating shots.
Because Hera's hologrammed in, so clearly Mary Elizabeth Winstead was standing in front of like a green screen and filming her part, and then they were just going to green screen that in and give her a holographic filter. Which, fair. I think you could have just had them actually be standing in the same room, and then you could just like edit her, like Hera post, whatever. So yeah, they were obviously filmed at two different times, and you can really tell, especially because then the way it's directed is very, reverse shot, very, very uninspired, and it's edited in a way, and I mentioned this to Jolly, where when one of the characters isn't in frame, they don't talk. They always wait for them to be back in frame, and then they start talking. And so it makes it feel very stilted and awkward. And I think it's just a very odd scene.
Yeah, it's in terms of cinematography, in terms of editing, it's a number of very bizarre decisions have been taken here that feel very baby's first filmmaking.
Is it Weinstead? Shit, wrong one. I keep saying Winstead. Is it Weinstead?
It's
Weinstead.
It's Winnie Stude.
Winnie today.
I mean, Southpaw might be fucking with you. I don't know.
Well, I think he is earnestly correcting me, but like, I think he's also just wrong. He likes terriers. I'm gonna look it up. You guys go ahead.
Her husband was looking at sea otters.
Elizabeth.
So there's the Stonehenge scene, and let's get the easy stuff out of the way first. So we get a bit more characterization on like what Balin's goals are, right? Where he's like, oh, Morgan's looking for Thrawn, and Shin's like, yeah, but what do we get out of this? Like, well, power such as you have never dreamed.
Southpaw, I looked it up. It says Winstead. You're wrong. Google told me it's Winstead. You fucking liar.
Google never lies. Google is my friend.
Is he implying that Mary drinks a lot of wine? I don't know.
Could be.
I mean, to be fair, I do too, so, you know.
I could have sworn it was Weinstead. Yeah, well, I could have sworn you weren't a lying grifter. Anyway.
I guess we're both wrong. But yeah, so Balin's motivation is a bit more fleshed out of like something. He's not interested in Thrawn, but he thinks that the going to Thrawn will lead him to some source of power that he is a bit ambiguous about at this present time. But it's nice to know that he's not a Thrawnite. He is merely in a marriage of convenience at the moment.
He's clearly a mercenary. Like he says, I'm paid. Like he told Morgan that he was paid to get her. So like he doesn't have any official allegiance with the Empire, and it doesn't go beyond money, at least for now.
I guess my point is like what Morgan thinks presumably that he's working for her because she's paying him. Whereas this line seems to imply that like, yeah, he's taking the money, but actually he has motives beyond what she thinks.
Yeah.
Which I mean, we don't entirely know what he means yet. Like we don't know what he's referring to in terms of power.
Well, I have seen a theory that he's referring to the Lothal temple ruins that were on Thrawn's ship, which is the world between worlds and the time travel shenanigans all over again.
So I've seen a theory that he wants access to the world between worlds because he wants to stop the Jedi from being wiped out. He wants to go back in time and prevent Order 66. And it's like,
oh no,
that seems like that seems good for maybe like a character arc, but for like just logistics, please don't do that.
Oh, by the way,
I don't have this.
By the way, I want it to be said right now. Like after having seen the first 2 episodes, I am 100% convinced now that there's going to be like time travel or alternate universe or something like that.
Please.
I 100% believe it will happen.
I don't know where you're getting that because we haven't gotten any actual hints that that'll happen. It could.
She mentioned, I don't know, so what leads me to believe this is she mentions like time across time and space. And then there's also the fact that the pacing of these episodes so far, like they've already, by the end of this episode, not to jump ahead a little, but by the end of this episode, they already know where Balin and Morgan are. So I feel like that confrontation is probably going to happen in the next episode. So then what's going to happen for the rest of the season?
Well,
maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe most of the season will be spent in this other galaxy that they're like alluding to.
Yeah, it could be that, you know.
Hang on, because that's I want to talk about the extragalactic stuff in just a second, because there's a lot to say about that. But just while we're focusing on the multiverse or time travel, like I'm fully believe that time travel is going to be brought in. I'm fully prepared to believe they're going to bring in that kind of shenanigans. I've seen nothing to hint at multiverses so far. I've seen people jumping the gun on this. Also, I'm sorry guys, but just saying the word multiverse is not a criticism. You can do multiverse as well. It's a neutral trope.
Yeah, like I don't want Ahsoka or anything in Star Wars to ever establish it, but like
I agree.
Theoretically, it could, and it could actually be really well written. Like let's not just immediately write it off if they ever do establish it. Let's see what they do.
It won't be, but we could be.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like Disney canon is already broken beyond repair anyway. Like I don't know.
Well, can you imagine? Can you imagine if it turned out that Filoni was actually doing what everyone has said he was doing ages ago, which is like he's using the world between worlds to retcon the Disney like sequels out of existence?
Yeah, I mean Kathleen Kennedy would never allow that to happen. But I mean,
what she doesn't know.
She's also like, I've been hearing rumors of her retirement for like years now, but like she's also getting up there.
I mean, Kathleen Kennedy at this point is the living embodiment. She's the living embodiment at this point of the whole meme of rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
No,
pretty
but
much.
you're right, Sheev. I mean, it's not going to last forever, but
She's like 70 now, or like older
Well,
than that, maybe.
no, you see, she'll never go because no one's ever really gone.
Oh, she'll be with us in spirit. Don't worry.
What they'll do is they'll use AI to CGI her back as the head of the studio.
oh my
That
god,
took me a second.
that's pretty funny. Yeah, no, and as a CLS studio just said, especially with her stupid Ray movie, yeah, like with that coming out, like I doubt this.
I think she's sticking around just to make sure that happens, and then she'll retire.
Yeah,
Because I mean, and I'm not even just saying this from a perspective of like, oh, I hate Kathleen Kennedy. I want her to step. She's just old. She just, go ahead.
yeah.
I kind of view her the
Take
same way
your
I view like
fucking
Mitch.
40-year pension. You got this.
I kind of view her the same way at this point that I view like Mitch McConnell, where I'm like, God, you're old. Like, just stand down, damn it.
It's okay. We'll make it. It'll be okay.
Or Dianne Feinstein, where I'm like, are you even like sentient anymore? Just like, please retire.
I mean, I could see her sticking around long enough for the Ray movie to come out, and then she'll be gone. I don't know.
No, she'll be in that Palpatine like corpse harness from Rise of Skywalker. I have been forcibly retired before.
She is 70 years old as of June 5th. So
Oh wow, that's actually a lot younger than I thought she was, but never mind. But never mind.
Yeah.
That's like the thing when someone told me that like Bill Clinton is younger than both Biden and Trump, and I'm like, oh god.
He is?
He is, yeah. He is.
Huh. Wow.
Oh my god. Anyway, all that aside, now we have to talk about the extragalactic stuff. So Morgan apparently, and this is how things have apparently gone down, was receiving night sistery whispery things in her brain, telling her that Thrawn was alive somewhere.
Across time and space is specifically what she says.
Across time and space. And now the map is now revealed to be... So this map was left behind by explorers from a different galaxy who traveled to the Star Wars galaxy and left it.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that we are now establishing extragalactic travel. At least we're doing it in a way where it's like done by outsiders and not by anyone in the galaxy, which would have broken everything.
Yeah.
However, there are two very funny consequences of this line of logic. The first is that the fucking Purgle space whales from Star Wars Rebels apparently have the ability
to carry Thrawn and Ezra to a different galaxy.
Yeah, they can apparently travel intergalactically, which, oh my god. These fucking space whales, man.
Jolly and I were actually tossing around some theories that they could potentially do that could actually work in the favor of this show with the Purgle, but we'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah.
It is also worth mentioning, and I consider this like potentially a criticism with Rebels, but I can at least, say that Rebels never confirmed this in the text, that Thrawn and Ezra survived. Because how the fuck do you survive that anyway?
Yeah.
The fact that they were in a broken Star Destroyer being carried off into space by, fucking space whales, but like being carried to a different galaxy in that kind of a state.
They're dead.
Come on.
They're fucking dead.
They did not survive that. Come on.
So that's the space whale's amazing powers is one side of that funny coin. The other side of this funny coin is that and again, there is a solution we have that solves both of these problems. But the second one is this might be the most cosmic contrivance I've ever come across. So at some point, explorers from a different galaxy several thousand years ago came to the Star Wars universe and left a map to their location. And of all the places the extragalactic capable traveling whales could have sent Thrawn, it just so happens to be the one fucking galaxy and the one fucking place in that galaxy that this galaxy has a map to. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also why is Morgan convinced that this is where Thrawn is, and that she needs to retrieve this map to this other galaxy to find him?
She's hearing whispers.
She's hearing voices.
Yeah, apparently
Thrawn is telling her that he's there at that specific galaxy and that there's
a
map that leads to it.
Yeah, I guess the information being conveyed into her brain thoughts are specific enough to be like, Morgan, I'm in another galaxy. The one that's that map at that temple leads to.
Yeah.
You need to go find. I don't know.
The map that just so happens to have been left to your ancestors.
So here's the potential solution that Jolly and I were tossing around. Basically, and this could actually explain away the fact that like biologically, just as an evolutionary thing, how the fuck did Purgle even exist?
Oh yeah.
Jolly kind of laid this out a little bit in our Mando stream, just as an aside, because we'd been talking about it previously. But how does a species of whales that live in space evolve to a point where like it's ever evolutionarily required to be able to jump into light speed.
And how do you do that? Like,
now-
what is the gradual?
And how does that happen?
Yeah, what's the gradation between not going at light speed and going to light speed?
Yeah. And so the potential solution to both of these points that Jolly just raised is that actually these extragalactic, aliens from the other galaxy actually created the Purgle in a sense. Like they combined technological advancement with like a sentient species that existed in their galaxy. They sort of fused them into one thing and then sent them all over and like into our galaxy as well as probably other galaxies. And then I guess they just decided to take Thrawn and Ezra with them back to their home galaxy, maybe?
Well, so the
It could
solution
just be
here,
that they jump to and from galaxies all the time because that's something they're capable of doing.
I think the solution here is like, if it turns out, and this is doing a hell of a lot of writing for them that I don't think they're going to do themselves. The potential solution here is like, if the extragalactic species the Purgle are kind of bioengineered by them, and that there are kind of organic, extragalactic hyperdrive, which is perfectly possible. That's tech that they could, I guess, make in this universe.
Yeah, I believe it. And it would be pretty cool that like since the Purgle are what inspired galactic citizens in the Star Wars galaxy to like invent hyperspace for themselves, that would mean that these extragalactic aliens actually inspired hyperspace for
and that could even be deliberate. Like maybe they sent out Purgle to different galaxies to be like, look, this is possible. And then the reason Thrawn is the reason that they go back to where Thrawn just happens to be, the map pointing to, is because they are literally designed to return to that point. Like that is like the follow us back here, guys. Look at the Purgle, develop this tech, and then follow us back here. We're all from here. Come here.
Yeah,
because people have pointed out that when Balin looks up at the sky and one of the scenes, he sees the Purgle like flying around up there, which I think is supposed to mirror the path to the other galaxy that we end up seeing later when Morgan activates the map. So I don't know, like you're right, like there could be some sort of connection there, because they explicitly showed a Purgle.
We've outlined all of this, but here's my problem. I do not for 1 second believe that they're going to do any of this.
Yeah, so like that's the thing is like that would actually be pretty cool, I think, but like they actually need to establish it, and I don't even think that they've given it enough thought to be like this needs to be explained, or that the Purgle need to be explained as a concept. It's just these are things that exist, so deal with it.
Sorry, I just looked at Sprite Anon's message, and I think it's maybe worth addressing.
If the whales are designed that way, it would mess up Rebels a bit. Instead of Ezra using the power of the light side to charm them, he's controlling biologically designed. No, they are still animals. He is still, in touch with animals. It's like a force thing. It's just that they're also like a species that were bioengineered by an extragalactic race and sent out into different galaxies. I don't see why there's not like why those two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I suppose. And the interesting thing, like again, this would have to be paid off, is that if we went down this route of they are bio-designed, then the question becomes like, why in 2,000 years have the whales not all why are the whales now free to run around the place, on a whim, and how come the extragalactic visitors haven't been back? Now, I can presume that there's an easy answer to solve both those, which is that the species that did these things is now long since gone, that they're dead now.
Could be.
Which would be nice. It could even be used as a kind of like cross comparison. Like, here is the fate of those who go too far, or something. In the way that the Zepho were in Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah,
Fuck, it might even turn out that this is the Zepho. Who knows?
Oh, it could be. I was actually thinking that. And I guess the idea could be that as far as the people in this galaxy are concerned, that like mysticism surrounding the Purgles has just been lost over time. I guess in terms of like what they were originally. Used for.
Yeah, they've become just kind of background details.
Yeah.
Did I miss this when you said this? Jolly genocide is nice.
Whoa, what?
What?
What the
fuck?
fuck?
I wasn't sure if Joe was quoting you directly, like out of context, or if they were just saying you said that. I don't know.
I have no idea what the fuck that's referring to, and that's mildly insulting, but never mind.
No, genocide is nice. It's cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's jolly. It's a very jolly thing.
A very jolly thing.
Explain yourself, Joe.
It's jolly side.
So, like, just to bring it back, yeah, they are introducing extragalactic travel, and just like with the multiverse, it's a concept, and with any concept, it could be done well or it can be done poorly, and we'll just have to see where it goes. Let's not jump the gun. Let's not jump the gun and immediately just decide, oh, that's stupid.
Well, I guess the thing is, like, I fully believe it's going to be done badly. However,
Me too.
if it is, that's a problem with the show, not these 2 episodes.
Yeah,
Well,
I suppose so.
I'm not even putting that. See, theoretically, there's a Star Wars story out there, and someone's going to bring up the Yuzan Vong. It's not really what I'm getting at. Theoretically, there's a Star Wars story out there that was really well written, that dealt with extragalactic travel and really expanded the lore in a lot of ways on that front. And like, it was really cool, and everyone loved it. And maybe Ahsoka will be that, but I don't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a I might be misremembering my EU stuff, but wasn't there like an attempt under Palpatine to create an extragalactic hyperdrive ship that went really badly wrong?
So the Outbound Flight project was proposed by Joris Sabayoth, the original, not the clone from Heir to the Empire, who basically wanted to, bring a bunch of Jedi out to different galaxies as sort of a missionary thing. Like, we'll spread the Jedi way to other galaxies and like teach potential inhabitants of other galaxies about the Force. And he got like the Senate to approve it, and they were building like a big fucking space station that would allow for potentially extragalactic travel. However, Palpatine actually was secretly against the idea because he knew about the Yuzan Vong, and he did not want us, like, he did not want the galaxy ever like getting to the point where we tried to like do extragalactic travel. And so he was working to sabotage it. He was going to have like Trade Federation ships attack it while they were like just on the edge of the galaxy and sabotage them and like completely destroy the ship so that didn't happen. What ended up happening instead is the Outbound Flight project caught the attention of Thrawn in the Chiss Sea, and they ended up that's how Palpatine and Thrawn actually met. They ended up meeting, and he was like, "Yeah, we have the same goal. We both know about the Yuzan Vong. We understand what will happen if the Jedi are able to like spread around and to go to different galaxies. Like, we're going to work together to stop it." And they did. The caveat, of course, being that Anakin and Obi-Wan were both like part of the project. So Palpatine had to like bullshit a reason why they couldn't come, basically, so that they wouldn't die. And yeah, I like that book. It's pretty neat.
Just sorry, we don't need to bring this up. I just want to quickly address it. Sprite Anon, when you say that this stuff is out of the tone of Star Wars, you need to explain what you mean.
Yeah, we've already been over this. Like, just tell me what that actually means and like what
is the tone of Star Wars.
Yeah. So that's
anyway,
that.
Well, there's one thing I want to bring up real quick. This is kind of in relation to upcoming scenes as well, but it's a bit more general. Who does, and maybe this will be explained later, but I'm a little confused as to Merrick, like this Inquisitor guy. Like, who does he take orders from? Does he take orders from Balin, or does he take orders from
Morgan?
Morgan.
Well, because Vader was the leader of the Inquisitorius, and without Vader, you'd imagine like the Inquisitors would be a bit directionless. But then again, I was under the assumption, or I think it was even confirmed canonically, but apparently not, that the Inquisitors were all gone by the time of A New Hope.
Well, apparently not.
Someone taking a piss?
No, I was pouring myself a drink.
Yeah, I guess he's like the last Inquisitor, maybe? Question mark. He's just.
That's what people are calling him. They're calling him the last Inquisitor.
I don't know where
I don't know how official that is.
Like,
yeah,
we don't know anything about him or where. Whatever. He has Inquisitor lightsaber and looks exactly like the Eighth Brother. So.
I mean, literally all that we know about him is that he's probably played by Sam Witwer. That's basically all we know.
Yeah, it could be.
Which, of course, is leading people to think that he's Starkiller, and of course, that's not helped by the fact that his name is Merrick, even though Merrick is just the name of a knight in like the King Arthur stories who was turned into a wolf by a witch named Morgan. It's a neat little connection. It's just another thing. Dave Filoni likes wolves. He'll name anyone any kind of wolf variation.
Balin and Shin are this as well, because like Hattie and Skoll are the name of the 2 wolves in Ragnarok that eat the sun and the moon. So
yeah. Dave likes wolves. That's all that is. There's no further significance to the name Merrick. It's not even spelled the same way.
Yeah, I mean they're deliberately making him kind of mysterious, so I'm sure they're going to reveal something about him later.
Yeah.
What comes after the Stonehenge scene? Is it back to Corellia?
So then I think that's when we start doing the Corellia investigation.
Oh yes, Dr. Taub. It was nice to see him again.
Who?
Dr. Taub from House. It's the project manager.
Pete Jacobson, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I haven't seen House.
He hasn't aged at all. It's weird. Like, he looks exactly like he did back then. It's very odd.
But yeah, so you want to take this, Jolly?
Well, okay, yeah. So basically, what happens is they arrive on Corellia, and PJ, I'm just gonna call him Manager Man. Manager Man comes out to meet them, and he's talking to Hera when Ahsoka turns up. And,
I think his name is Min, by the way. Myn. We just call him Min.
I had no idea what his name even was.
So I'm going to call him Manager Min.
Manager Min. Eminem.
Madam Min.
Manager.
the manager. Anyway, so yeah, Min's talking to Hera, and basically she's like, I want access to your records, and I want to see what's been going on here, and I want to see, like, I want you to tour us around Morgan Elspeth's old holdings. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm really busy. Fuck off.
He's like, I can make this a more efficient inspection, and then he kind of like reluctantly agrees.
Yeah, so basically the sense we get here is that Corellia is under New Republic jurisdiction, obviously. He's wearing a New Republic pin, so this is clearly under their auspices. However, he says he's a businessman, and that most of the workers across the planet were also the workers there during the Empire. And at which point, Hera's like, oh, doesn't that worry you that they might not be loyal? And he's like, well, no, because they were never loyal to the Emperor. They were just loyal to being paid, and they're still being paid, so who the fuck cares? Which, like, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Fair, yeah. Well, I mean, he has a line where, like, you can't just turn from an empire to a republic overnight. It sort of has to be phased out. It's not just like, oh, we'll fire all the employees who work in these shipyards because they were Imperials. It's like, come on.
Well, there's real life. That echoes real life. I mean, after World War II, you couldn't just punish. You couldn't give capital punishment to like every single Nazi, because like the entire infrastructure of a lot of Europe would just completely collapse. So they had to they obviously punished the top dogs. They punished like the guys at the very top, and people responsible for camps and stuff. But a lot of the lower level people, they just let off the hook, because it's like, well, if we just punish thousands upon thousands of people, then like nothing's gonna. Yeah. Germany will collapse, which could cause
every
problems later.
Every German worker who turned a blind eye to their Jewish neighbor being pulled out into the street, or every single police officer who didn't help a Jew escape. Like every single person in Germany at that point would have to be put to death, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And like that obviously can't really function. So when like Min is like, yeah, you're going to find ex-Imperials at pretty much every level of the New Republic, because like obviously, and like again, whether we consider the Mandoverse or not, that Mandoverse scene with Pershing, where like there's the senators who are like, oh, Empire, Republic, it doesn't really make a difference to me. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. There would be those people. They would exist. I mean, fuck it. In real life, Coco Chanel, the founder of Chanel.
Yeah.
Did you know what happened to her after World War II? Because it's really distasteful.
Go ahead.
So during the war, a lot of her perfumes were like co-owned between her and two Jewish people, I think brothers. She struck up a romantic relationship with an SS officer and tried to have them murdered so that she could get her patents back. They got out of Dodge, but after the war, Coco Chanel, through a friend who was also a friend of Churchill's, basically wrangled it so that she could just fuck off to Switzerland with her SS lover and be left alone. And the reason they did that was, other than just personal friendship reasons, was like, well, she owns a lot of like infrastructure and factories and shit like that, and like it's gonna be a real hassle trying to fucking sort that out. So we'll just send her quietly where she can't do any harm, and like hope it all works out.
Yep. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, there were a lot of those like uncomfortable concessions that like were made, post-war, and it seems like something similar has happened here.
It comes up a lot in history. I mean, the other thing is like the end of the slave trade in Britain, right? Like when basically what happened was, we have a bunch of very rich people who own a bunch of slaves, and we want to outlaw it. What do? It's like, well, you can basically start a war with these people to try and force them to give it up, at zero cost to the state. But that's going to start a war. Or you can just buy them out, buy every slave off them and release them, which enriches a few very evil bastards, but it solves the issue. And it's a very uncomfortable compromise that like they chose to make. Whether you think that's right or wrong, that's the decision they chose to make.
Yeah,
kind of like what the Jedi or the Republic could have done to take a stronger stance about slavery in the Outer Rim.
Yeah,
that's
kind of
on my mind with the Clone Wars stuff, which talking about Anakin's characterization, but that's neither here nor there. Just something I thought I'd throw in.
Anyway, yes. So they're doing this tour, and there's a little bit while they're on, between asking Min about his life, where Hera and Ahsoka have a conversation about Sabine. And thank God Hera actually called this out, even if it wasn't done in a very emotive way. Ahsoka's like, oh, she's not ready, and Hero's like, oh yeah, and when is someone ready? Exactly?
Yeah, what is? I'm curious. What makes someone ready?
And Ahsoka gives like a bullshit answer of like, well, it's basically just like you just know. And
She
Hero's
said,
like,
"You know, and they know," and it made me think of that line in Finding Nemo where the turtle guy Crush was talking to Marlin, and Marlin was like, "How do you know that he's ready?" And he's like, "Well, when they know, you know, you know."
Oh my god, the Jedi are just the turtles from Finding Nemo.
Yeah,
150, dude, and still young.
I love that movie.
Yeah, they go up to like the main overseeing office, and they're like, still, Hero's like, I want all the information on like everything you've built from Morgan Elspeth's yards, and he's like, you don't have the authority to have that information. Well, to be fair, he looks it up first, and he's like, oh no, this is classified. You can't access this.
He's like, I'm a general. Nothing's classified to me. I'm just like, well, that's not how that really works. But I get your meaning.
I mean, to be fair, I think what's happening in that scene is she's trying to bluff him, right? She's like, I'm a general, give me the authority. And to be fair to him, he essentially, in manager speak, tells her to fuck off. Because he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll bring the protocol droid over and she can deal with you and tell us the protocol for this.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just another, just manager way of saying, like, I'm going to get the instruction manual out and show you that you're wrong.
Yeah. Which is fair.
Yeah, and that's all fair and dandy. And then Ahsoka's like, oh, have you built any assassin droids? And Min's like, well, no, obviously not. That would be like really bad. Why the fuck would we do that? What would be the point? And then the protocol droid's like, oh no, we have. I saw them. And Min's like, wait, what the fuck? Why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you report this?
And the protocol droid's like, well, they had a higher rank than me, so I couldn't. And I was like, wait, oh no, if we've just done the Kenobi thing again with the
yep.
With the like, oh, I outrank you, so I get to go past the checkpoint. Like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah, so that's a thing.
Anyway,
protocols exist for a reason.
As that, you think a protocol droid would know that? But as this is all happening, Hero's looking out the window, and actually, again, thank God this is Hero doing it because she's the one who knows ships, so this makes sense that she would notice this. She's like, those engines out there, who are they being built for? And
because there's nothing in our fleet that we're building that needs that.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, these are being designed for the Republic. And she's like, no, they're not. At which point, some Morgan loyalists in the control room pull out guns, yell for the Empire, and try to kill them.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Well, because they're like, we stopped that ship. I gave you an order, stop it. And she's like, I can't. And then someone's like, for the Empire, and pulls out a gun. They're like,
Just don't pull the gun, man. Just keep on delaying them.
Yeah, keep stalling and being bold. Like, she'll probably get fired, but like that's okay. You're devoted.
Why don't you just destroy the computer rather than shoot at Ahsoka? Shoot the computers.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just the thing that happened, and you're like, okay, there it is.
Well, yeah. Hera runs out to get to her ship. Ahsoka jumps out the window and lands without bending her knees.
But that knee's starting to hurt.
And obviously, like, we've already had a fan do like a better edit of this on Twitter, but like, there's a lightsaber fight that breaks out between Marek, one of the TK droids, and HK droids, and Ahsoka. And the choreography is not good.
Nor is the color grading and just general like cinematography and directing. Like Jolly said, like some random guy on Twitter was like, I thought I might be able to make it better, and he did. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, pulled out a like an After Effect on his computer and was like, oh yeah, these lightsabers, they should have like a drag effect in the air, right? Like a blur effect.
Well, so by comparison, because this is Corellia, so it's the same planet as the opening bit for Solo. And Solo is generally touted as like a pretty ugly Star Wars movie, which I disagree with. I think if you just turn the brightness up a bit, it's actually very pretty. That being said, it's not exactly known for its great cinematography and just great like lighting and whatever color grading, but it looks like you compare the scenes from Corellia to the scenes in this show, between Solo and this show, and it's like there's a clear difference in just flair and style and just like the way it looks, and it's like it's better lit even if it is way darker in brightness, and like it's got like a more dynamic, and like it uses colors to its advantage, right? And it doesn't look quite as flat. It just looks better.
There's just a kind of general sense of apathy that goes into a lot of like the cinematography of this show.
Well, with this show, it really feels like because Dave is like the showrunner and the writer, and I think he's directing these, or I think
He didn't direct episode 2, I don't believe.
He directs a few of them.
Yeah.
What it really comes off to me is like he doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, excuse me. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. He could improve over time, theoretically, like he did with animation, like in terms of just the look of things, not in the writing.
Yeah. I just saw a comment that I think maybe actually should we address at the end, like the whole talking about Thrawn and Mando season 3 thing?
We can just talk about it now. I think it's fine.
All right, because we were like, if Thrawn is off in another galaxy and only talking to Morgan somehow, what the hell was that scene in Mando season 3? If this is in the Mandoverse, where Peleon's like, oh, Thrawn is directing things from behind the scenes. Don't worry, guys.
Like it has to just be that Peleon is bullshitting, right? Like he believes that Morgan has a way of finding Thrawn and getting him back, but for the time being, he's just stalling.
Well, yeah, that's the conclusion. Yeah, that's the conclusion that I came to. Is that I guess he just must have talked with Morgan, and Morgan must have just reassured Peleon that.
And it's totally within. So I said this to Jolly. I'm not going to argue like adaptation wise because this version of Peleon could be completely different from how he is in the books. That's fine. But if he's not, then I don't think it's within character for Peleon to trust Morgan. He doesn't trust people like Sabayoth. He doesn't trust anyone but Thrawn, and only because he's seen what Thrawn can do. So I don't know.
Well,
he's putting a lot of stock in what this random witch is telling him, basically.
Well, option number 2, and this is going to confuse things even more, is that it could have been a different timeline, like that. Well, not different timeline, but that episode of The Mandalorian with the Shadow Council could have happened like after what we're seeing now. And
so I think Dave Filoni or someone confirmed that this is taking place alongside Mando season 3.
Yeah.
Right. So
maybe Thrawn is already back by the time the Shadow Council meeting takes place, which again just reinforces that criticism we had of why is he not present for it.
Yeah. Why does he not turn off to talk then?
Yeah. We criticized that back when we did our season 3 coverage. He's a very hands-on kind of guy. He would not leave it up to his subordinates and like allow festering like treasonous behavior from Gideon like that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when like his presence, like the lack of his presence, is what's causing them to start questioning Peleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, like there's issues, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Marek has a fight with Ahsoka, which is very badly choreographed, but things happen. Meanwhile, Hera chases the departing engine carrying ship with Chopper, and Chopper is like, shoot it down, and she's like, no, because it'll crash into the city. They have a funny back and forth, quote unquote funny back and forth, where Chopper's looking for his tracking device, and he gets grumpy with
I just want to acknowledge the fact that he has a little compartment of stuff just outside, because he's outside the ship.
Yeah.
And like I guess drag isn't a thing, and it's not like Hera's spinning around flying at really high velocities or anything. He just has stuff. It's not like pinned down or anything. It's like, why is it not all flying out?
Yeah, I mean, even in space, angular momentum is a thing.
Yeah, like that's just not a good place to put things, Chopper.
Well, it would just be kind of funny if Hera's like, Chopper, get the tracking beacon, and he's just like, no, if I open this drawer, I'm gonna lose all my shit.
Well, side note, I don't know what you guys will think about it. Like, I know Chopper's voice has always been like slightly too, like, more like a voice than a droid a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's just he's saying stuff and then distorting it a bunch, but like in this show it feels a lot less distorted.
Yeah, it's more noticeable. Like there were bits where I'm like, I can very clearly hear what you're saying. It's kind of annoying.
It is. People find that charming, and I'm like, no, that's the opposite, I think.
Yeah.
Gunner, which is kind of ironic considering what you're saying. You said, but the ship has no guns. What are you referring to? You're referring to the Phantom?
Yes, it does. Chopper just suggested shooting it down, which she said not to do because that would, cause it to crash into the port.
Yeah, as for the other ship is actively shooting at them. So, like,
yeah, the ships have guns. I don't know what we're saying.
Anyway, yeah, Chopper manages to fling a tracker onto the ship before it departs, and Marek gets away with help from Shin after like pulling back his lightsaber, and Ahsoka sort of just like wiggles mildly out of the way.
Yeah, like to say she dodges it is kind of an understatement. She just kind of like, or kind of an overstatement rather. She just kind of like moves slightly.
It
It's
was
really badass, and it's like, okay, but
yeah.
you know,
I mean,
that
it's
could have
just
she
an
could have
insult to the
easily
word
been
dodge.
killed. She could have been killed pretty easily there, and he should have. He should have just angled the lightsaber.
Well, we were talking about this, right? Because like our issue is not that we had a cool scene where she dodges the lightsaber. It's just like if you're going to do that, make them competent. Like make the blade, a horizontal strike at her midriff, and she like jumps or dodges out of the way more overtly.
Yeah.
It's this like, oh no, it has to be a stoic moment where she's like barely moving. I'm like, but
So
it looks
cool
shit.
and badass.
It just looks crap. Like,
I don't know what to say.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
the other weird thing about this, before we get to Morgan Elspeth scenes on the weird giant space station, is apparently it's going to take them several days for Chopper's tracker to like tell them where this thing has gone.
Maybe I think. Well, so I assume the way trackers work is that they can only tell you where someone's gone once they finally drop out of hyperspace, and you can be like, all right, cool. This is where they exited hyperspace. This is the system they're in, which
Yeah.
I'm fine with. So they're like, yeah, we'll wait for them to land wherever they're going to land, and then I can tell you where they're going.
Okay, in which case that might actually be like a net positive. Like maybe the show is the first thing in a while in Star Wars to actually say that hyperspace takes time.
Well, we
Yeah.
see the Eye of Sion, as Elsbeth calls it, like arrive at the end of the episode, and this is after several other scenes take place. So like time passed.
The Eye of Darth Sion. Remember him?
Yeah, I want to think
Jangles.
it's either
Remember
just
the
a
EU?
little. It's either just a little fucking reference that'll amount to nothing, which is probably what it is, or are we like relating this to the Old Republic stuff and the Star?
Oh my god! Can you imagine? Can you fucking imagine if we got to the extra galaxy, the second galaxy, and like Darth Revan was there?
Oh, fuck off!
Oh god.
Just Keanu Reeves in Darth Revan.
No, please.
Well, if rumors are to be believed, the KOTOR game remake is in trouble, so maybe that's how they'll do it.
Oh no! I want that to succeed because I like KOTOR a lot.
Yeah.
Sad noises. Anyway, yeah. So meanwhile, Ahsoka goes back to pick up Sabine because Sabine transmits a message to be like, "I'm ready now," and Ahsoka's like, "Cool beans," which like shouldn't really change anything that Ahsoka first said about you keep on fucking everything up.
Yeah. Well,
but
you
okay.
see, Jolly, they've developed it so strongly that Ahsoka wants to take Sabine on and give her another chance, and Sabine wants another chance to like be a Jedi without being a Jedi.
All those meaningful conversations they've had, all that great development we've seen.
I really would have loved to actually have had some kind of relationship between these characters going.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing. Like, it's done. Like, I don't see why they would backtrack and show us this stuff now, because like she's already accepted like her place now. So
you
I don't know.
Oh,
just going
God.
back to Rebels, like it always felt weird to me that at the end it was like, okay, I guess Ahsoka and Sabine are going to go off and try to find Ezra. These two characters who don't really know each other, I guess they'll just
I just had a thought.
we
So it
would
feels
expect-
almost retro. It's extremely like retroactive. Like, well, so they are going to be the main characters of this show because it's going to be about the search for Ezra and Thrawn. But like these characters don't have any relationship with each other, so they're just going to have to pretend that there was one off screen.
I've just had a thought which is going to hurt everyone in this call. Like psychic damage will be about 1 billion.
Uh-oh.
Can you imagine if they got to the extra galaxy and it was fucking Valkorion?
Oh,
No. I feel like Rick Grimes when he found out his wife was dead.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, God.
It's that
gonna be
Jennifer
the main
Lawrence
villain.
meme where he's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?"
Please,
Oh.
just don't. Just
The dark side of the Purgles is a pathway to many galaxies, some considered to be complete bullshit.
Well, because that's the thing. Like people would be expecting the big bads at the end of all this to hopefully be the Grisks, which are in the Thrawn novels. It's kind of like the thing that Thrawn
Aren't
has
they
been like
also
preparing
part of
for.
the main galaxy. They're just in.
I thought they
region.
were.
Yeah, they're in the unknown regions. Yeah, but that's what people were expecting. But imagine it turns out to be Valkorion instead. It's like, oh no.
I might be misremembering. Wasn't there a trailer line from the Thrawn trailer where he's like, "Oh, I joined the Empire to save my people, and now they're all gone"?
Was there? I don't remember that being a thing.
I think so. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Like in
Maybe
a
I'm just
Ahsoka
having a
trailer?
horrible hallucination.
Is that official? Like, I don't.
Was that like you're talking about like in an Ahsoka trailer? Because I don't
think
remember
so.
that.
I think there was like a Thrawn specific trailer where there's that line, but I might be just horribly misremembering and like having a mental like maybe my nightmares are creeping into my reality.
That sounds familiar, but I thought that that's something that somebody just said on like Twitter or something.
I haven't heard anything about that, so I couldn't say.
Anyway, yeah, that's all done, and then yeah, what's left? The space station. Morgan's like, okay, we're building the big space station. The holograms on this ship look a bit weird for some reason. Everything's gold. Don't worry about that.
Well, I mean, can we talk about that? Like, I'm pretty sure that that's supposed to be implying that this space station is at least using tech from the other galaxy. Like, I don't know why they would even include that detail without that being a hint that this is some kind of extragalactic machine that they're using.
In which case, I guess the explorers who came left with the map and designs for how to build a space, like an engine ship separately, and she had one or the other. But then, if that's the truth, then like the Purgle theory goes out the window.
Yeah,
it's very opulent, and then like I don't know, over the top compared to what you would expect. I'm just like I don't really get this.
Yeah. Anyway, so Morgan's like, we're being evil, cackle, cackle, cackle. And Balin's like, what do, boss? And she's like, I want you to go kill Ahsoka. And he's like, oh, I mean, okay, like
such a shame to have to kill a Jedi.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I like that moment. It's a neat little hint at like what his character might be. Is like he feels some semblance of regret for like what became of the order he was once part of, and like the fact that one of its last vestiges is now in his way, and that he'll have to potentially kill her. Like that sucks.
I like the little line as well when Morgan's like sentimentality, and he's like, no, truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, kind of like Count Dooku vibes, sort of.
Oh yeah, I wanted to address the fact that like Ray Stevenson obviously is no longer with us. It's very sad.
Boo.
And I like the little moment at the end of episode 1 where they said "for our friend Ray" at the end. It's a neat little touch.
Yeah, he's a legend, Ray Stevenson,
and he's doing a wonderful job so far in this show.
Yeah, I agree.
Considering what he's been given, like absolutely. Yeah.
It's a shame we're not going to have him going forward. I wonder. Here's my little personal fan theory. I think Balin is going to die at the end of the series at the hands of Marek.
Why? We don't know anything about Marek.
Well, no, because my simple thing is like I think Balin's being set up for some kind of heel face turn, and I think at that point the only way you get him out of the canon is to kill him, and Ahsoka's not going to be doing it, so Marek could be the one to do it. Particularly if you're right, and Balin's whole thing is I want to bring back the Jedi in some way. Like Marek as an Inquisitor might be like, no, fuck that.
Well, so like obviously it kind of feels like with I was going to say it kind of feels like The Last Jedi with Carrie Fisher, except actually that was released a whole year after she died, so they had time to change it if they needed to. But like Ahsoka was finished up before Ray Stevenson died, so like they might not have written it so that he had to be written out of the canon. Like they might have just ended his story with him living. Maybe he like finds Luke and is like an invaluable asset to like rebuilding the order because of all the knowledge that he has of
maybe he's the one who talked Luke into taking Kylo as an apprentice.
Like they could do something like that, and like because obviously he can't ever be there going forward, like that would put a wrench in the plans, sure, but like considering that they didn't know that is all I'm saying is like they may not have written it so that he dies.
I'll give you an even worse theory, and this is what I think is going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but I think this is what's going to happen. I think he's going to like die in the next 2 episodes. I think he's just going to be left behind to like stall Ahsoka while they like power up the Eye of Sion or whatever. They have a fight, she kills him, and then the rest of the season is them and the rest of like this other galaxy.
We do see in the trailers Ahsoka and him fighting at Stonehenge, so that could be the next episode or so.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Don't.
I mean, if that happens,
even before he died, like it's just a crime to waste Ray Stevenson like that.
Yeah, that would be such a waste of him if they actually go that route, but I think there's a chance of it.
The man was Blackbeard in Black Sails. Don't you dare waste him.
Yeah.
I even think that show. It's on the list.
I love that show. I love that show.
It's really good.
I even think they kind of wasted him a little bit in that. Not.
Oh yeah. Season 3 of that show is massively truncated because they knew they were going to get cancelled.
Season 4, you mean? Like the one where
Sorry,
he dies?
yeah, sorry, season 4, yeah, the final season.
Yeah.
Anyway, how much more about is there to say about the episode particularly?
I think we're done. I think that's it, isn't it?
Because we already
Yeah,
touched on they changed details for the epilogue from Rebels, and it's like, yeah, thanks. Visual information in canon.
The visuals aren't canon. I was just about to say, yeah.
That's an actual argument that people are making now.
I want to see how far they can push that. I want to see how far they can push that. Like, Kanan comes back and he's like a 7-foot tall black man with blonde hair. Like, it turns out the Loth wolves were actually just like turtles. Like,
yeah, I thought you were
No. I was just like listing off like ridiculous scenarios. I'm just like, I get really tired of arguments like this.
He was waiting for someone to stop him in his absurdity, and we just let him keep going.
Yeah, I was like, someone chime in.
Someone please stop me. Pull me back from the edge, please.
Guys, if Filoni's actually listening, you have to stop me before he goes too far.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I feel like
by his voice actor. Yeah, that is a shame because it's a great voice, but
yeah,
you can't.
Kind of tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Joe,
there's one.
I see your comments saying, to be honest, it doesn't bother me that much. And I'm like, that's very sweet, and I'm glad you like it. But
I wasn't even going to address that. It's like, yeah, I'm glad. That's good for you. But it's still inconsistent.
It bothers me.
It bothers me. But even if I didn't, I'd still acknowledge it as a flaw.
That's the thing. Even if it doesn't bother you personally, like you have to understand, right, on a mechanical level, why an inconsistency does end up bothering the majority of people. Why it can have greater drastic consequences if it's left unchecked. Yeah, this is not us to be like, you're not allowed to like stuff. This is just something like, look, there is a kind of mechanical predictability to storytelling.
You are not allowed to like this show.
I'm
putting my foot down, Jolly.
Well, tough. I like this show. No, I don't. But fuck it.
Fuck.
I'm fine with the show. The show is fine. That's about as much as I'm giving it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excited, but I'm interested to see what happens. Make of that what you will.
Yeah, I'm more intrigued for this than I am for Mando.
I mean, it's just a personal thing because of how much I love Rebels, but just the idea of seeing Ezra again fills me with excitement. Even though I don't expect it to be good, I'm both excited and fearful for what they'll do with him.
Well, and the thing is, especially after having seen the 2 episodes, I'm kind of losing hope that some of the things that I wanted explained going into the show are actually going to be explained. I do not think, honestly, at this point, that they are going to explain what the fuck Ahsoka was doing during the OT. I don't think they're, or really just anything that she did.
Dave knows that needs to be addressed.
No, I don't think
so.
He
thinks that it's fine.
I think he's just moved on from it. He's just like, yeah, well, that's done. On to the next stuff.
Well, I think I said this to someone. It might have been Jolly. Even if originally he didn't realize why that's obviously a problem, it's been 4 years since the end of Rebels, so he's definitely seen that criticism, eventually.
Well, this just goes back to
at some point.
At the beginning of this, when we were talking about okay, you can criticize this through the kind of lens of 2 different continuities, and that's going to lead to different results. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair, and that's totally fair. However, to bring the Mando verse back for a second, if the Mandoverse is canon, yes, the show can never be good because it's just too broken a canon at this point. However, you still have a responsibility to try and mitigate the damage. And questions over where was Sabine during the Purge? What happened to Ursa?
Exactly.
What happened? Where is Ahsoka? I mean, this is for both continuities. Where was Ahsoka during the OT? Where is Luke now? These are questions you can't just not address.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's what I'm saying is it's kind of tricky because yes, we are trying to be as good face to the show as possible and just ignore the Mandoverse because God. But at the same time, there are just things in the Mandoverse that need to be addressed. So we're kind of going at this from 2 different angles at the same time. That's
even
the
if
only
it's
way
just
we can do it.
Even if it's just to confirm, the thing is, you can get around the Luke problem and the Ahsoka problem remain. They just become slightly different versions of each other, right? But with the Sabine, where were you during the Purge problem? If it turns out the show does actually exist in its own continuity, then obviously they don't have to answer that. But in order for that to be made, in order for that to be the case, they need to make clear that it's a different continuity.
Well,
you need to.
Yeah, which I mean they won't because I mean we're being really meta about this, but in terms of just how it actually is. This obviously is in the same continuity as the rest of the stuff. We can't pretend it's not, like, objectively speaking, because of course it is.
Oh yeah, the intent of the producers is that this is in the Mandoverse, and like therefore, if you want to like, I mean, like, you know, my rating for the show is like a 5 out of 10 based on like a good faith Filoniverse just on its merits, criticisms. But the second you bring in the Mandoverse, like this thing is a 2 because it can't not be. Like the Mandoverse is fucked.
We're trying to give it the same. We're trying to give it the same like chance to prove itself, like we would give to something like Andor. Because, like you said, you know, if we were to be like, well, Andor sucks because it all ends up going to shit with the sequel trilogy anyway. It's like, well, that's not fair. You know,
it's not fair.
Yeah.
I just really like that.
Like at that point, it's like, why not just pack it in and give up? Because you can't write something good in Star Wars ever again.
Yeah, just reboot it at that point. Which honestly, maybe. But
there's
when you're like, there's you know, no one ever gave them a chance. I'm just like Andor's in the corner being like, no one ever gave me a chance.
What about Andor? Did you give him a chance? Did you?
Pushes like Ahsoka out the window.
Along the same lines, though, about like Sabine and where she was during the Purge, these episodes do establish that she did in fact leave and go like hanging around with Ahsoka, go into all these different places at some point in these intervening 10 years. And
they never got involved with the Mandalorians being wiped off the face of the earth.
That's the thing. The only way I'll accept that Sabine ever left, despite specifically staying because Ezra wanted her to, like during the war, that is, if it was after the Empire was brought down, I'm fine with her leaving because, you know, Lothal is thriving. But the only time I would accept her leaving during the war, and in fact would encourage and find it out of character if she didn't, is if she, you know, stayed on Lothal, like during the Mandalorian Purge. That's out of character, so she should have gone.
Okay, so just want to address Roman Ocean, your comment. Like, no, and I want to make it very clear why this is the case. We are not saying that if one entry in a franchise is shit, therefore the whole franchise is shit.
We're saying that if something is so just irreversibly broken that it destroys the rest of the Star Wars canon, if you have to factor it in as a whole,
or at least heavily damages it.
Yeah, you can think of it almost like like error spreading in a system, right? Like if I'm like think of it almost like cancer, right? In a normal person, you'll get cancer like 7 or 8 times in your life and never even know it because like the error, the kind of cancerous tumor will just be destroyed by your body before it ever spreads. Like if that is what the Phantom Menace is, like if the problems of the Phantom Menace canonically, logically, just only extended to its own borders, you can kind of just isolate it and be like, yeah, that's a bad entry, but the whole saga is still intact. If, however, the cancer spreads, if, however, the error you have introduced, the continuity that you've broken is so fundamental to the entirety of the story that it extends beyond the bounds of that film and into everything else, then you have a problem, like a very serious problem.
And so, like, when I talk about the sequels undermining Andor, what I'm really getting at is, like, thematically, Andor is made lesser by the larger canonical context. Not necessarily that it's intrinsically a broken story, because the sequels exist. But like Jolly also talked about, like, you know, the Clone Wars introduces certain technologies that would be very useful in pretty much any story going forward, like the face changing tech that Obi-Wan uses and, you know, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like the Aldani heist. God, if you're Luthen Rail, give them that face change tech.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so like when technology like this exists that inherently just breaks the world and Andor doesn't adhere to it because that just ruins everything, like, you can't really blame Andor, can you? Like, you can't really fault Tony Gilroy for that.
Yeah. And pro last media, yeah, that sums up my feelings pretty well. I agree with that.
Can't help but get sad every time I remember all this New Republic content leads to the sequels. That will forever be a blemish on Star Wars, even for people like me who want to enjoy the new entries. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, no one. I mean, I only speak for myself here, but I presume this is for you too as well. Like, I didn't go into the sequels. I didn't go into any Disney thing wanting to hate it.
Oh hell no, like, hell no.
I remember I went into Force Awakens.
I was so excited for Force Awakens, dude, and The Last Jedi. I was so fucking hyped.
That's the thing, right? Because how old would I have been? That's 2015, right? Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have been. I guess that makes me. I can't even remember. My mind's not working mathematically. 2023 to 2015, 8 years ago, 21. I'd been like 21 then. So like, I went in at 21. I went in with my older cousin. We went and like had a nice night out, and we were just watching that movie. And like, we both came away being like, "Yeah, it was fun, I guess." And then you think about it, and like a couple of days pass, and you're still thinking about it, and then we're like, actually, no. And then
Well-
like The Last Jedi came out and just broke everything.
Well, and even while you're watching like this series, it's a very sobering thought when you realize, yeah, somewhere out there in canon, Palpatine is still alive right now. He's out there on Exegol right now while all this is happening. That's just wonderful.
It's bothered me ever since The Rise of Skywalker came out, and it still annoys me that neither Luke, Han, nor Leia ever existed in a world where Palpatine wasn't out there doing shit. They all died before
and
he
apparently
was defeated.
Also, Anakin's Force Ghost is an evil bastard because he never told them. But
So it's just shit like that. You're just like, oh god.
it just ruins everything. I mean, the thing is, like, part of what makes us so angry, and part of the reason why we are so invested in like trying to give honest, critical feedback to improve these products, is there's a real sense, at least on my part, of missed opportunity. Like we were talking about it earlier with the Vader stuff in Ahsoka. Like this is such a potentially rich universe that is full of like thematically deep and emotionally resonant, and just has so much going for it. And they keep fucking it up. It's really annoying.
Oh my god, yeah, like how they skipped Luke and Ahsoka's first meeting.
Yes,
that's
exactly like that.
Like that's a concession that I made. It's like, okay, she should have died on Malachor, but if you're going to keep her alive, one of the opportunities you have is to explore like their first meeting. It's like, holy crap, what they could talk about, that would be so cool. And then
imagine...
well, at this point, I don't even trust like if they actually were going to do that scene and like we hadn't seen them interact ever before that, I just don't trust them anymore. They would be so. It'd be like Vader and Kenobi reuniting in Kenobi, and it's like the most generic ass dialogue ever.
Yeah,
Ahsoka meets Luke, and Luke is like, "Did you come here to destroy me?"
Yeah, but no, you're right. Like
it'd be like that, where it's like
it'd be such
stupid
vapid
generic dialogue. It's like very vapid. Yeah, it's no. I don't trust that to be like a meaningful and well-written scene.
The comparison I try and make. Have you guys both seen Band of Brothers?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Like I fucking love that series. It's really good. Now, do you remember the first time the Easy Company get pulled back off the front line and they get sent back to England to resupply and recuperate? Private Malarkey, he goes down to the local village, to pick up his laundry, and the pretty girl who's like in the laundry is like, "Oh, it's nice to see you. Here's your laundry." Oh, this guy, I can't remember his name. Like, just call him James. James didn't come to pick up his laundry. Would you mind taking it for him? And like, James is one of the guys who's been killed. And Malarkey's like face is like, he's trying to like keep it together. He's like, "Yeah, no, I'll take that." And she's like, "Great. While you're here, these guys didn't come to pick it up either." And then she just reads off like the list of people that have like been killed and haven't come to pick up their stuff. And like you can see him just trying like desperately not to like just break down in her laundry. And I'm just like, stuff like that. Like this is a universe where we've had like holocausts and genocides. People's friends have been murdered like in front of them, left, right, and center. Their entire civilizations have been wiped out. Their best friends have been murdered. Like, I don't understand why no one seems to give a fuck.
Yeah. I don't, oh god. Like, and good point. Sprite Anon's comment. An army of child soldier slaves are currently undergoing training, so they will one day pilot Star Destroyers for 5 minutes before getting blown up before even leaving orbit. Like, that's true.
Well, to be fair, the last time we had a slave army with horrific trauma, we didn't address that either. So
so why start now, right?
Oh god.
Yeah. But yeah, so like the whole point that we've been getting at for the past like 5 minutes is like, we're gonna judge this show on its own merits. We're gonna watch it and like try to take it on its own. But at the same, there is always going to be that small part of you that just is thinking about the wider implications from like a canon standpoint, and it's just like, oh, it's depressing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's horrible to have to consider.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're coming up to 4 hours almost precisely, so I think I might call it. But it's been really fun, as always, Sheev, to be on a podcast with you. And Odrin, it was really nice having you along for the ride. Hopefully you'll come back for the future installments of what I'm sure will be an excellent and well-written show.
we got 3 more of these to do, so that'll be fun.
Oh, is it only 3?
Well, there's going to be 8 episodes, and this is the 4th one. Or this
I think there's only 3 more. I think there's only 3 more episodes. I was like, Jesus Christ!
No, we're going to do it in 2 episode increments, I assume.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Well, because the last time, like with the Mando stuff, we tried to do it every 4. But for the first part, we were able to do that. But then we had to separate the last 2, in 2 different parts because
they were disastrous.
There was just too much to talk about in 2 episodes. Then, yeah.
Oh god, I'm just waiting for them to reintroduce like Sabine's armor being Beskar, and then we have to talk about Beskar
Oh,
all over
Oh
again.
no!
no. Oh, I'm
Damn
actually
you,
really
John.
worried about that. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm thinking back to Rebels, like her armor was not Beskar, right? Like it was clearly something else because she
it
can
was like
easily be shot.
Durasteel. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep it like that. Please don't fuck with Beskar.
I mean,
Please.
to be fair, her armor did tank several deflected shots from her own pistol from Vader.
I mean, I'm fine with it at least having some resilience to like blaster fire. It's
well,
just,
yeah. Otherwise, what's the point, right? At least your armor doesn't
be
block blaster fire.
careful with how much you introduce there.
Apparently, it was Beskar, but not pure Beskar. Okay.
What does that mean?
There is no such thing as pure Beskar because Beskar is an alloy. Jesus,
I don't know.
it's
Oh,
it's canonically an alloy.
I
like,
think this is where we're gonna call it. I don't
Yeah.
want to fucking do
Yeah.
this shit anymore. Fuck this!
Damn
I
you.
quit.
I'm
Damn
gonna
you,
go and have some
Mandalorian.
delicious supper. I'm gonna go and have a shepherd's pie. It's
Ooh,
gonna be great.
can I come over?
Oh sure, I get on the plane and get over here.
Yeah, I'll haul ass. I'm not kidding.
It's the stuff. This is my favorite part of the year. Like it's like summer's just ending, so it's still warm, but you're moving into like the autumn colors and like autumn foods.
Yeah,
And like one thing actually I've stolen from America from you guys because my American flatmate introduced me to this is like apple butter, which like man, that stuff is really nice. Just spread it on toast, fucking delicious. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to autumn and then spooky season.
spooky season. Woo!
Oh, actually, that's a point. Sheev, I know you and we want to watch Fall of the House of Usher. Are we
Yes.
going to do a review on that?
We could. Yeah, you want to do like a stream breaking it down?
I think that'd be cool actually, because I love Mike Flanagan's work, and I want to see Mark Hamill in one of his pieces of work. That's going to be great.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yes.
I hope
All
it's
right.
really good, but if it's really bad, it'll be fun to break down too.
Yeah.
Well-
if it's a midnight mass scenario, it's going to be a disaster. but oh
Oh.
well.
Well,
Man.
I need to go take the Eye of Sion to the grocery store. So, you know.
That sounds like the most terrible euphemism I've ever heard.
I'm gonna go yank my Eye of Sion, if you know what I'm saying.
Gonna go
Oh,
take
boy.
my Eye of Sion to the grocery store, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh.
All right.
All right. Thank
Bye,
you, everyone in
guys.
the chat. Good night.
Love you. Woo.
Bye-bye.